Chapter 50. Although Jingwan's small courtyard was not as big as Sun Yijia's courtyard in Duke Dinggua's mansion, nor was it as gorgeous, it had an exquisite layout. Sun Yijia liked it even more. In addition, there were no restrictions here, so she trusted Jingwan completely. Sun Yijia was even showing signs of going crazy. Her personal servants, especially the wet nurse, wanted to say something many times, but in the end, they held back. They had never seen their young lady so happy. Without comparison, some things were hard to discover. Thinking back to the past, they only thought that she was the most standard and the most outstanding noble lady. They only thought that she had a cold personality, but it turned out that she was restraining herself and even suppressing her own nature. Perhaps she had never been truly happy before. They were inseparable from her almost every day. Even if they didn't completely understand her thoughts, they more or less knew. Although they felt sorry for her, because of her usual habits, they only thought that she was just a little heavy-minded and shouldn't be a big problem. Moreover, even if they wanted to comfort her, their words wouldn't have any effect. After a long time, it was even harder for them to say anything. She was of noble birth and could have lived a carefree life. However, because of her noble status, she was tightly bound by it. Because her ancestors and fathers wanted to protect the Sun family's foundation that had been accumulated for thousands of years, they were never satisfied with their noble status. If they wanted to be more noble, then they had to give and sacrifice. And the person who enjoyed the most would definitely have to sacrifice the most. She had 3 blood-related brothers, so perhaps they could share some of the burden. She was the only daughter of the first wife. This only represented uniqueness and also sorrow. When Sun Yijia came down from the swing, her servants' hearts that were in their throats finally settled down. Just now Sun Yijia had asked them to push harder and harder. She was getting higher and higher, and even the flying sound of her clothes even made it sound. They were afraid that she would fall. One had to know that when she sat on the swing in the past, at most, her feet wouldn't even be considered high from the ground. This time, the height of her flying height was almost the same as the horizontal bar above. The wet nurse hurriedly looked at her palm. Sure enough, it was red from the abrasion. With a gentle touch, Sun Yijia couldn't help but withdraw her hand. It was obvious that it was painful. What should I do? What should I do? Sun Yijia didn't care. She only knew that she was very happy now. This little bit of pain was nothing. Nanny, I'm fine. Ah, blood. Qingju pointed at the blood on the swing and exclaimed. Almost everyone present knew what it was immediately, including the rash Qingju. After she spoke, she realized that she had done something wrong. Her face instantly turned red, and she was at a loss. Qingju hurried forward to pull her away and secretly glared at her. Sun Yijia, who was originally in a good mood, was now so embarrassed that she wanted to crawl into a hole to hide her face. She finally noticed the slight discomfort of being ignored by her. If it were in the past, she would have noticed it a long time ago. Even when she first had her period, she had never been so embarrassed before. Moreover, it was in front of little sister Wan. Fortunately, it was at little sister Wan's place. If it had been in the morning, it would have been even more embarrassing. However, she wasn't so crazy in the morning that she didn't notice it. She would have noticed it immediately, and definitely wouldn't have embarrassed herself. Fortunately, Sun Yijia's wet nurse knew that her daughter's period was not very accurate. However, she also knew that it would probably be in the next few days. Before she left, she had already made preparations. Miss Luo, I need to borrow your place. Nanny, you're treating me as an outsider. Jingwan waved her hand and walked to Sun Yijia's side. She gently stroked her back. Sun Yijia, who was comforted, breathed a sigh of relief. Compared to the maidservant's shyness and slight panic, Jingwan was calmer than the wet nurse and nanny. She ordered the maidservants to fetch hot water. After confirming that Sun Yijia indeed had a change of clothes, she asked her wet nurse to help, and led Sun Yijia to the room to change. When Sun Yijia finished changing, her face was still a little flushed. However, she felt much more comfortable than before. She couldn't help but whisper, "Little sister Wan, you're so smart." She replaced the contents of the menstrual belt with cotton. The stitches were so fine and dense that it was almost impossible to see. It wouldn't be abrasive at all. Then, she sewed the underwear onto the specially made underwear. It was close-fitting and comfortable to wear. It might be very troublesome for ordinary people, but for noble ladies like her, there were so many people serving them. Even if they changed frequently, it didn't take much effort to do it. Moreover, they basically didn't need to take apart and wash them. Jingwan chuckled. Big sister Jia, it might be a little tight. However, I think that after you go back, your servants will help you deal with it. Sun Yijia's wet nurse hadn't come out yet. Jingwan's wet nurse was also still in the room. Sun Yijia saw that Jingwan was calm and composed, and gradually stopped being shy. Whether it was in her heart or in her appearance, she had shared the most intimate things. Even her own sisters weren't so close. Sun Yijia felt that little sister, Wan, was good no matter how she looked at it. It would be great if she was her biological sister. However, it didn't matter. It was the same to let her be her sister-in-law. It hadn't even been a day, but Sun Yijia could completely open her heart to someone without any precautions. It was definitely a miracle. However, perhaps she could also feel that Jingwan didn't have any bad intentions towards her. Miss, it's ready. Qingmei brought over a small bowl of reddish-brown water. Jingwan gestured to Sun Yijia and said, I asked the kitchen to cook it. Drink it. It's good for your blood, and can warm your stomach. Sun Yijia didn't hesitate at all. She picked it up, and used a spoon to ladle it up, and drank it one mouthful after another. After Sun Yijia finished drinking, she wiped her mouth. Little sister Wan, what did you cook it with? Not only is it delicious, but after drinking it, it's very warm and comfortable. When you go back, I'll give you the recipe. This recipe can be used by any woman. Although the degree of effectiveness is obviously different, it's beneficial and not harmful. When you go back, ask the servants to cook it for you. You can also drink some on a daily basis. Sun Yijia accepted it without hesitation. How is it? Does it still hurt? Jingwan held Sun Yijia's hand and touched her palm that was still a little red. I don't know what your wet nurse applied on my hand, but it's very cool and comfortable. It's much better than just now. When we go back, it'll definitely be fine. That's a cream made by Nanny. It's very effective for these small abrasions and cuts. I often fiddle with those flowers and trees by myself, so it's inevitable that my hand will get some small injuries. It's all thanks to Nanny that my hand can be so well maintained. Sun Yijia played with Jingwan's hand. It's true. Your hand is even prettier than mine. However, it's not just your hand. I feel that little sister Wan's skin is very good everywhere. She rolled up Jingwan's sleeve and lovingly stroked her arm. Not only that, she even reached out to pinch her face. Jingwan smiled and dodged. I have my own secret recipe, but I've used it all up. After I came to the capital, I didn't have time to make it. Why don't I give you some to try? Why don't I give you the recipe, and you can have someone make it? No, such a precious recipe is one of a kind. Do you think it's like those blood-nourishing recipes that can be found everywhere? You give it to everyone you see. You're really thoughtless. Jingwan pointed in the direction of the Wei Zi with her chin. Sister Jia is not the same. You're thoughtless. I'm presenting it to Buddha with borrowed flowers. It's not mine, so I don't feel bad at all. Just like Sister Jia, although it's mine, it's not very important, so I don't feel bad. Even so, Sun Yijia still refused. If she took such a good thing back, and had someone make it, it would be impossible to keep it a secret. She had come into contact with too many nobles, so it would be better for it to be leaked from little sister Wan's hands. She might even gain some benefits. These benefits to her were just icing on the cake. It was completely unnecessary. In little sister Wan's hands, it might be of great use. Just give me more of the finished product. I'll secretly hide it, and use it myself. I won't give it to anyone. Jingwan smiled and nodded in agreement. When Sun Yijia's wet nurse came out, she saw that her young lady was in good spirits and her face was rosy. She was not like her usual self. These days she was always listless and pale. Sun Yijia did not hesitate to praise the drink just now. Sun Yijia's wet nurse was very clear that her young lady's condition was not only because of the bowl of sugar water. Her good mood was also a big factor. However, all of this was because of Jingwan. Hence, she thanked Jingwan very seriously. Nanny, you're too polite. Since you call me sister, you naturally won't call me that for nothing. Jingwan smiled faintly. If Jingwan was good to someone, she would not hold back anything. She did not even care about the invisible rule of not giving away things that had entered her mouth easily. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652931. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Biku Pavilion mobile reading website m.bicken.com. Chapter 51. Jingwan's servants didn't look happy, but Jingwan's expression didn't change. I have a guest here. If she has something to say, tell her to come back later. Her tone was light, but she wasn't polite at all. But the servant girl still wanted to say something. What? Third older sister's guest is so honorable that I, as her younger sister, can't bear to see her? Luo Jingying was dressed in plain clothes and had a bit of elegance. She walked over gracefully with a gentle smile. Jingwan saw several people following behind her, including the servant who guarded the courtyard. The servant's face was slightly angry at this time, and her clothes and hair were slightly messy. She didn't need to think to know that she stopped Luo Jingying from coming in. So Luo Jingying brought people and forced their way in. Anyone could tell that there was something wrong with her words. Although Sun Yijia was the only legitimate daughter of Duke Ding, there were also several sisters born of concubines in the family, not to mention many cousins. Because her status was the most honorable, she couldn't bear to see them fawning over her. So her relationship with them was similar to that of an outsider. Although she rarely asked about those things, she knew a lot of troublesome things. However, since it was related to younger sister Wan's family matters, she sat on the side and remained silent. Her face returned to its usual coldness. It's not that I can't bear to see you, but that I don't want you to see them. It's troublesome. Luo Jingying's smiling face stiffened. She didn't expect that Luo Jingwan would be so rude in front of outsiders. Third older sister, your words hurt younger sister's heart. If your heart is hurt, go find a doctor to prescribe medicine. I don't treat patients here. Sun Yijia almost laughed out loud and hurriedly covered her mouth with a handkerchief. Younger sister Wan was such a good-natured person, but there were also times when she was sharp-tongued. Luo Jingying repeatedly told herself to stay calm. Her mother's words echoed in her mind over and over again. However, her mother didn't know that Luo Jingwan was a person who didn't play by the rules. She never cooperated with you when you tried to maintain a harmonious relationship with her. She didn't care about what other people couldn't say. She often went straight to your heart. No matter how good-tempered you were, you would be angered by her. Moreover, Luo Jingying wasn't a good-tempered person. Third older sister, please don't be angry. Younger sister only admires Miss Sun's talent, but I never had the chance to be friends with Miss Sunday. Today, when I found out that Miss Sun came to the food to look for third older sister, I couldn't suppress my yearning and shamelessly came here. When she turned to look at Sun Yijia, her eyes were quite fervent, and she greeted her in a dignified manner. Sun Yijia nodded. Miss Luo is too kind. My talent is nothing. It's just a small matter. On the other hand, Miss Luo's poetry is agile and graceful. It's very well written. Therefore, even if she was as prideful as she was, one shouldn't underestimate her way of doing things. In the capital's social circle, even if there were unmarried women who were far from her level, she would still remember them, even if she had only met them once or twice. She would know their talents in certain aspects. Sure enough, Luo Jingying revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. Has Miss Sun seen my poetry? Then, she slightly restrained herself and smiled humbly. However, she couldn't hide the pride in her eyes. I'm only slightly good at poetry. I'm far from Miss Sun's proficiency in the 4 arts. However, speaking of which, third older sister isn't bad in these aspects. After all, grandmother dotes on third older sister so much. In the past few years in Qianfu, she must have hired a master to teach third older sister. Third older sister and Miss Sun are so close. If there's a chance for you to cooperate, it might be a good story. Oh, then I really can't do as you wish. It's not like fourth younger sister doesn't know that older sister is just a common person. I can't even recognize a few words. Naturally, I can't play with those elegant things. Therefore, Luo Jingying always wanted to tear her mouth apart. She was clearly embarrassed to speak, but she was always able to say it without a care in the world. She was calm and indifferent. Originally, she should be ashamed to show her face. However, from her mouth, these were clearly small tricks. It wasn't that she didn't know how to, but that she disdained to learn them. Third older sister, there's no need to be so humble. In front of fourth younger sister, older sister has never known how to write the word humble. Jingwan wasn't a mean person, but when she was mean, she simply wasn't human. No matter how good you were at dealing with people, she could easily make you speechless. However, until now, the only person she was mean to was Luo Jingying. Younger sister just wants to be close to third older sister. Third older sister, why are you always so harsh? Luo Jingying gently bit her lips with a delicate and pitiful look. Her words and actions were describing how bad Jingwan was. You should have been used to it long ago. You clearly know that you are being bullied by me every time, but you don't know how to avoid it. Every few days you bump into me. Those who know will naturally understand that fourth younger sister is good at everything. On the contrary, I, as your older sister, am unruly, indecent, arrogant, and despotic. Those who don't know will just think that fourth younger sister needs to be taught a lesson. If you don't bully me, you will feel uncomfortable all over. Luo Jingying's face turned green and white. It was very interesting. However, even so, she still didn't leave. In the eyes of Sun Yijia and the others, it was simply a perfect confirmation of Jingwan's words. Sun Yijia looked at Luo Jingying with a strange look in her eyes. It was as if she was saying, so there is actually such a person in this world. However, when she looked at Jingwan, there was a trace of respect unconsciously. It turned out that she could treat someone she didn't like this. Yes, she should bring her home and try it out next time. Jingwan was a little speechless. She seemed to have unintentionally led a perfect noble lady astray. Luo Jingying was the most upset. Clearly, it was Luo Jingying who was the bad one. Sun Yijia didn't see how bad she was, and even took her words seriously. As expected, the arrogant beauty was just a facade. On the inside, she was just like that B***tch Luo Jingwan. She was used to putting on an act to deceive the world. It was time for the world to see how rotten they were. She couldn't help but bear a grudge against Sun Yijia. One day, she would make these high and mighty noble ladies kneel at her feet. Luo Jingying knew that if she continued, she would only be humiliated. Thus, she chose to remain silent. Jingwan and Sun Yijia also ignored her. She didn't want to leave, so they pretended that she didn't exist. Because Sun Yijia was inconvenient, they talked quietly. Young miss, it's not good. Concubine Bai has miscarried. She's shouting that the madam caused her to miscarry. The madam wants you to go over. A sudden voice broke the silence. Even Sun Yijia felt a little awkward at this time. Such a filthy matter was brought to a young lady's house, and she even wanted the young lady to go over and take a look. What was this? What kind of rules were there to speak of? It made people even more suspicious. Was this family's backyard all like this? If this spread out, who would dare to let their young miss be on good terms with this family's young miss? It would lead their young miss astray. However, this old woman didn't come in from the outside. Instead, she came in from the side of Begonia House. Generally speaking, this kind of layout was known to be connected to the courtyard of the person closest to her. It went without saying who that person was. This old woman's words were a slap in the face. Luo Jingying covered her mouth in surprise. When she looked at Sun Yijia again, she was so ashamed that she couldn't show her face. It seemed that she had dirted her ears by letting her hear this. Young Miss Sun, I'm really sorry. I didn't think that. Jingwan glanced at her. Although she was still indifferent, Luo Jingying felt a little frightened, and instinctively shut her mouth. The gloating feeling in his heart, and the pleasure of seeing Jingwan embarrass herself suddenly disappeared. My mother usually doesn't care about things. She probably didn't know that there was such an unruly person in her courtyard. "Nanny, take this old woman away and teach her the rules," Jingwan said indifferently. The old maid immediately burst into tears. When she appeared and shouted those words without caring about anything, Nanny Gong was prepared. Two strong old maids immediately stepped forward to cover her mouth and dragged her away. Nanny Gong also followed. Jingwan looked at Luo Jingying again. "You've achieved your purpose of coming here. Now you can get lost." "Third sister, what are you saying?" "I'm here because of young Miss Sun." https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/6652932. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicon.com. Bicon.com mobile edition reading website, mbicon.com. Chapter 52. This kind of superficial cultivation was not something that could be done overnight. No matter how calm she wanted to be, when her soft spot was poked, she couldn't help but panic. Jingwan's face was cold. "I know my mother's personality the best. She doesn't even dare to kill an ant. So why would she be so ruthless to take a life? In this Luo family's backyard, there are only two people who want to harm her. Either it was that idiot concubine by who directed and acted on her own, or, since you knew in advance, the possibility of the latter person is higher. No matter who it is, she better clean up her tail, otherwise. Why aren't you getting out of here? Are you waiting for me to call someone to beat you out with a broom?" Luo Jingying dared to be arrogant in front of Jingwan. But she had never seen her so cold. She was inexplicably afraid, and didn't dare to explain anything. She took her people and fled. After she went out, she couldn't help but be even more afraid. Previously, when she came back from the garden, her mother asked her a few questions about why she was unhappy. She told her in detail, but Madame Lu only smiled and told her that she would help her vent her anger soon. She also said that it was better to have a noble daughter. She thought that it must be her mother who was going to make a move, so she almost didn't think about it, and excitedly ran to Begonia House. In the end, she didn't get to see a good show. Not only would she be punished when she went back, but more importantly, she might ruin her mother's big plan. Jingwan sat quietly, but Sun Yijia clearly felt that her mood was not right. For the first time, she ignored the wet nurse's opinion, and didn't get up to leave because of her signal. The matter had already happened, so leaving like this would hurt people's feelings. Moreover, the reason why that old woman came was obviously because of her. Otherwise, who would do such a strenuous and unrewarding thing? The purpose was self-evident. "Little sister Wan." Jingwan looked at her. She didn't want to smile, but she didn't force herself to smile. "Sister Jia, I've let you see a joke." "Little sister Wan, in fact this is nothing. Which backyard can be clean? Moreover, I believe you. And I also believe that the madam who can give birth to a woman like you is not a vicious person. Anyone with eyes can see that this matter is caused by a villain. Don't take it to heart. Sister Jia treats me sincerely. Since this matter is out in the open, I naturally won't hide it. We're good sisters after all. Naturally, we'll be honest with each other. I also believe that Sister Jia won't have a bad opinion of me because of this. I just hope that Sister Jia won't let this matter affect your mood. This matter won't affect me, but your sulky little face is affecting me." Sun Yijia reached out a finger and scratched her nose. "Don't worry about this kind of thing. At the very least, there's still your grandmother." "To be honest, Sister Jia, no matter what the reason is, I don't care. What I care about is that that little life is gone before it can even take shape. To be honest, I don't like father's concubine's son and daughter, but that's only because of their status, not because of themselves. I can treat them coldly, and ignore them as long as they don't provoke me. Under the same roof, I can live peacefully with them, but I don't want to see them lose their lives for no reason. Since the heavens allowed them to come to this world, others shouldn't take their lives away so easily." Sun Yijia was startled. She didn't think that little sister Wan's heart would be so kind and gentle. This way of thinking isn't wrong, but sometimes this will harm yourself and your loved ones. Jingwan smiled faintly. Sister Jia, you're thinking too much. I'm just adhering to the principle of not taking the initiative to hurt or scheme against others. However, if others take the initiative to attack me, I won't be polite either. If I don't teach some people a deep lesson, they'll always think that our second branch is made of mud. Sister Jia, why don't you go back first today? Jingwan said as she moved closer. With Sister Jia here, it's not convenient for me to teach someone a lesson. It's one thing to let you know, and another thing to let you see it with your own eyes. This image is still important. Sun Yijia snorted with laughter. It's impossible for me to see it even if you want to. Even if you're willing, your family won't be willing. Alright, I'll go back first. I'll come back another day to play. If you have nothing to do, you should go to Duke Dinggua's food to visit me. I'm usually very bored. Otherwise, be careful that I don't run to your house every day. Jingwan nodded in agreement. She had a servant girl copy the prescription for her, and then sent her away. Jingwan turned back. She wasn't in a hurry to go to Falling Plum House to take a look. Where's that biddy? Young miss, she's in the woodshed. Wet nurse, follow me. The others don't need to follow me. They knew that their young miss was worried that they would hear something they shouldn't hear. However, they didn't think that she was younger than them. Sometimes she was like this. As servants, they couldn't disobey her. Outside the woodshed, a rough biddy was guarding. Mama Gong wasn't there. She must have gone to check on concubine Bai. After the door was opened, Jingwan walked in. She didn't care about the dirty and messy place in the eyes of others. Compared to the crying and howling before, the biddy was very quiet at this moment. However, unexpectedly, her body couldn't stop trembling. If it was because of the fear of death, it was understandable. However, from her eyes, Jingwan felt that it was more than that. Did she say anything? She asked the rough biddy guarding the door. Young miss, no. After bringing her here, Mama Gong asked her, but she didn't say a word. Jingwan nodded, not surprised. Now she still doesn't want to say anything? The biddy raised her head and looked at Jingwan. Her lips moved, and there was hope and hesitation in her eyes. It was obvious that she was struggling in her heart. However, in the end, she remained silent, lowered her head and curled into a ball. Jingwan left. She was not angry, happy or sad. But it was this attitude that made the old woman even more afraid. Before, Nanny Gong did not scold her, nor did she order people to beat her. She just asked a few questions casually, and then approached her and said, You can be considered as an elder of the Luo family, so you probably won't betray your master just for a little money. Since you can splash dirty water on miss in front of outsiders, obviously you don't care about life and death. Then you probably also have a foot in Mistress Bai's side. Make the best use of everything. You are not a lonely old woman. If you are really alone, you should be thinking about living a comfortable life. How could you do such a thing in your late years? There is only one possibility left. Someone has captured your relatives to threaten you. Perhaps you also need money for them. It is understandable that you did such a thing. However, it is understandable, but it is unforgivable. No matter how many relatives you have, whether they are in or out of the mansion, you will meet them one by midnight tonight at the latest. The biddy didn't want to believe it, and she didn't want to believe it. However, Mama Gong's attitude was too calm and firm. In addition, the third young lady didn't panic at all. Even if she repeatedly denied it, she became more and more afraid. She was old and it didn't matter if she died, but her only grandson's parents died early, and he was less than 10 years old. The more the biddy thought about it, the more tears fell down. The third young lady had always been kind. Perhaps. The biddy suddenly got up, rushed to the door, and knocked hard on the door. Young lady, I know I'm wrong. I'll tell you everything. I don't deserve to die. I only beg you to save my poor grandson. However, no one could hear her. It was quiet in the Falling Plum House. This was the main courtyard of the second branch. Only Jingwan's parents lived here. The concubines and the 2 concubine-born sisters lived in the small courtyard at the back. Presumably, everyone was there now. Third young lady, you're here. Madam has something to do, and is not here. Come in and have a seat. I'll make you a cup of tea. Madame Zhang's head maidservant Lu Mei saw her and quickly came forward. However, she was a little anxious. Why did the third young lady come at this time? Didn't she have an important guest? Jingwan waved her hand. How's concubine by? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652933. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bikugo mobile reading website, bicken.com. Chapter 53. I've already detained her. I'll deal with her later. How's it going over there? The child is gone. Concubine Bai is crying and making a fuss. It seems that it was planned. The madams of the other branches and the old madam were all alarmed. The old madam didn't come and handed the matter over to the old madam. I don't know what's going on now. Knowing that Jingwan already knew, she didn't hide it. I'll go and take a look. Third young lady. The old madam strictly forbade you from knowing about this from the beginning. She didn't want you to know about this, so you shouldn't go. The old madam is with her, and the old madam will handle it impartially. She won't let the old madam suffer. You see, if the third young lady went over, and they couldn't stop her, she would be punished by the old madam. She really didn't want the third young lady to see such a troublesome thing. Jingwan paused. Where's my father? Is he not in the house? The second master went out to meet a friend. I've already sent someone to invite him. I don't know when he will be back. Okay, I'll go to grandmother. She had a big mountain to support her. If she went over, no one would say anything, and she wouldn't get the maids punished. At this point, even if the maids knew what Jingwan was going to do, they didn't dare to stop her. Madame Luo didn't seem to be surprised by Jingwan's arrival. Continue to protect her. It's because all of you protect her that she only grows older but not wiser. She's already so old, but she's still as innocent and naive as a girl. When you get married in the future, I'll see what she'll do. Can she continue to rely on her husband and her son? Men spend most of their time outside. If someone really catches the opportunity, they'll definitely scheme against her. If 3 or 5 times aren't enough, they'll do it 8 or 10 times. Sooner or later, your father will have a grudge. Without your father's support, whatever Jingbo wants to do will be in vain. So before I get married, I have to quickly find a daughter-in-law who can help and protect her. Jingwan said with a flattering smile. How could Madame Luo not know what she was thinking? She glanced at her. I'm already worried enough about your marriage. You still want me to find a wife for Jingbo? Do you have the heart to let grandmother work so hard? What a heartless girl. Jingwan saw that her grandmother was angry, so she hurried forward and said, I'm not asking you to look for a candidate. I just hope that you can take a look at the candidate when father and the others decide. Seeing that Madame Luo was still unmoved, Jingwan softened her voice. She called her grandmother coquettishly and gently shook her arm. Her voice was so sweet that Jingwan herself almost had goosebumps. At first, Jingwan could still act coquettishly naturally, but after a long time, she felt like she was about to break down. Madame Luo saw that she was about to die and knew that she had reached her limit. She finally relaxed her expression and said helplessly, Okay, I promise you. In the beginning, he taught Jingwan how to show weakness at appropriate times. As for later, he seemed to enjoy watching Jingwan act coquettishly. The reason was that it was okay for a short period of time. After a while, Jingwan's little appearance made people very happy. Jingwan breathed a sigh of relief. It was simply killing her. In her previous life, before the family incident, although she wasn't arrogant, she was still proud and was flattered by everyone. After the incident, especially after her grandmother's health collapsed, whether it was the external environment or herself, she would never allow herself to be weak and would never show weakness to others. That kind of pride in her bones, even if it wasn't obvious in this life, was still there. Madame Luo stopped teasing her, but she thought of something else, and her face darkened. Sister Jiao left because she knew about this? Jingwan nodded and briefly explained what happened. These idiots. There are some things that they never understand. Madame Luo didn't know whether to sigh or be angry. Jingwan hesitated for a moment and asked, "Grandmother, how did third aunt marry into our family?" Although the Lu family was established as a duke and still had a noble title, with the decline of the Lu family, even if Madame Lu married into the Luo family, when Luo Peishan didn't hold the position of minister, it was still a proper marriage. Generally, even the families of fourth or fifth rank officials wouldn't look at them. Jingwan didn't look down on the Lu family, but in this place, where people paid attention to matching social status, it was strange that Madame Lu married into the Luo family. When your grandfather was young, he had some friendship with your third aunt's father and asked your grandfather for help. At that time, your eldest uncle was already married, and your father and mother were also engaged. Your fourth uncle was much younger than Madame Lu, so only your third uncle, who was born of a concubine, was left. The Lu family didn't mind, so your grandfather agreed to this marriage. So that was it. However, this also created a pair of resentful couples, whether it was Luo Rongping or Madame Lu. In fact, they looked down on each other from the bottom of their hearts. Madame Lu looked down on Luo Rongping because he was born of a concubine, and resented that she became a mother the moment she married into the family. However, she didn't have the courage to break off the marriage. She also knew very well that with her situation at that time, she couldn't find a better husband than Luo Rongping. She was proud and arrogant, and Luo Rongping, who wasn't valued since childhood, used his arrogance to hide his inferiority. He despised the Lu family from the bottom of his heart, but he didn't dare to disobey Luo Peishan. Thus for so many years he lived peacefully and happily. Luo Rongping had a lot of beautiful women in his harem, but other than his eldest concubine son Luo Jingming and his eldest concubine daughter Luo Jingxiang, there were only 2 or 3 children born of concubines. They were completely out of proportion to the huge group of beautiful women in his harem. Moreover, they were all relatively young. If they weren't weak, they were sickly. Many people in the Luo family knew that this was only because Madame Lu had loosened her grip on them in the past few years. As for whether it was because she had discovered her conscience, or because she wanted to accumulate some good karma for her children, or because she thought that their existence would no longer affect her and her children, only she knew. It wasn't that Luo Rongping didn't know her methods. Among the 4 brothers, he had the most concubines, but not many of them were pregnant. Even if they were pregnant, most of them would suffer miscarriages or die shortly after birth. Even if he had a pig's brain, he should have known what was going on. However, he didn't care and didn't ask. Even the concubines that he doted on at that time would at most criticize Madame Lu. They didn't scold her for being cruel and merciless, but they said that she didn't manage the household properly. Those who didn't know would think that he valued his wife. In fact, he was just selfish and cold by nature. He only cared about a moment of pleasure, and could turn around and pretend that he didn't know anything. Outside, Luo Rongping had always been a person who cherished his reputation. He still wanted to have a bright future, a high position, and a generous salary. Naturally, his reputation couldn't be bad. Because Madame Lu was very clear about this, she became more and more unscrupulous. Luo Peishan was naturally not a person who would intervene in his son's backyard. It was just that he inadvertently learned about his third son's absurd behavior. He also had the idea to punish him. However, when he found out that the husband and wife were just snakes and rats in a nest, he was too lazy to ask. As long as they didn't make a scene outside and become a joke, he would let them do whatever they wanted behind closed doors. Madame Luo naturally didn't want to care about concubine Bai's trivial matter. She left it to her eldest daughter-in-law to handle. If she went there, it would show that she didn't trust her eldest daughter-in-law. However, she also thought that Jingwan might come to find her, so she didn't say anything to her eldest daughter-in-law. Moreover, when Jingwan learned that her eldest aunt was handling this matter, she couldn't let her lose face. She also promised Madame Luo that she would just take a look. When they saw Madame Luo arrive, except for Madame Bai, who was lying in bed after the miscarriage, everyone hurriedly greeted her. Seeing Jingwan by her side, even if Madame Zhang was anxious, she couldn't say anything. Madame Bai, who was crying and howling like a shrew and refused to speak properly, automatically shut her mouth when she saw Madame Luo. "Madame Luo, please forgive me this concubine." "That's enough. Lie down." Madame Luo interrupted her. Then she looked at Madame Bai. On the day she entered the capital, this woman should have greeted her at the gate, but she didn't have any impression of her. Willow leaf eyebrows, an oval face, and because of the miscarriage, her face was pale and she looked very weak. She was delicate and pitiful. However, Madame Luo's face didn't have the slightest fluctuation of emotion. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652934. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bikago mobile reading website, bicken.com. Chapter 54. Sometimes, Jingwan admired these people who could act at any time and place. She was howling so fiercely, but when she stopped, she didn't seem to be in a sorry state. She was like a weeping beauty. If it was someone who didn't know, even if it was a woman, their heart would soften. However, in the face of her grandmother, who had experienced decades of wind and rain, those tricks were really not enough. Madame Luo walked to the side and sat down. "Old lady, what's the situation?" Madame Wang knew that Madame Luo didn't avoid Jingwan, so she directly said, "Mother, the thing is, Madame Bai's daily food comes from the small kitchen of the Falling Plum House." As soon as she finished speaking, Madame Luo turned her head to look at Jingwan, and Jingwan seemed to sense it and looked back. At that moment, Jingwan read the meaning in Madame Luo's eyes. "See, your mother is such an idiot." Jingwan was helpless. Her mother's purpose was actually very simple. She hoped that the pregnant concubine would be able to eat well. After all, without the support of her husband, a concubine would be a concubine. Even if she was pregnant, the amount of food she ate would not be better than that of the official wife. She would eat from the small kitchen, and she would even subsidize the concubine. Madame Zhang used to do this before, but nothing happened. Now it was the same as before. It was not that the people around her didn't remind her, but Madame Zhang was so naive and sweet. She thought that everyone in the world had the same thoughts as her. Not only did she promise that nothing would happen, but she also said that it was not good for the people around her to speculate about others with bad intentions. Jingwan was very busy a few days ago, and the people of the Falling Plum House didn't want to disturb her with this matter. They asked her to persuade Madame Zhang, thinking that it was only a few days, so nothing should happen. In the end, they all regretted it. Today, Madame Bai asked for some desserts. Not long after she ate, her stomach began to hurt. Soon, she saw red and reported it to her younger sister-in-law. Her younger sister-in-law invited a doctor she was familiar with from outside, but by the time the doctor arrived, the child was already gone. Daughter-in-law had someone check the desserts. There was indeed something unclean inside. The person in charge of making the desserts was second sister-in-law's head maidservant Lame. The person who delivered the desserts was second sister-in-law's second-ranked maidservant, Lu Er. Lu Er personally handed the desserts to Baishi's maidservant Kai Ling. The three maidservants all said that during the time the desserts were in their hands, no unrelated person had touched them. The ingredients used for the winter sweet were all ready-made from the Fallen Plum House. Her daughter-in-law had sent people to check the ingredients, and there were no problems. In that case, the problem basically lay with these three people. The Belle was a clever one. She swore that she did not do anything. She was the only one who followed Baishir into the Luo family. She was loyal to Baishir. She hoped more than anyone that her Inyang could give birth to a boy or a girl. Luo was usually lively, but she was not the least bit careless when it came to doing things. She received the desserts from Lame and handed them to Kai Ling. Along the way, there were basically people who saw her. After she finished her part, she did not say anything more. As for Lame, she was not a child of the Luo family. When she was a few years old, she was bought into the Luo family and followed Madame Zhang. From a little maidservant, She was promoted to Madame Zhang's head maidservant a year ago. She was a little dull and clumsy, because she was very good at making desserts. Although she did not do anything in the kitchen, she often made desserts for Madame Zhang. When she learned that something had happened to Madame Bai, she was so anxious that she cried. She repeatedly said that she did not do it. When Madame Bai slandered Madame Zhang, she also said that the madam was not that kind of person. She could not say a word more. As for the doctor, it was Madame Bai's second-rank maidservant Zhu who reported it to my younger sister-in-law. My younger sister-in-law said that she only heard that Madame Bai was not feeling well, so she went to invite a doctor from outside as usual, and did not bother the doctor in the house. However, Zhu said that she had explained Madame Bai's situation very clearly, and said that it was very serious. She wanted to make an exception, and asked the doctor in the house to take a look. However, my younger sister-in-law said that she was just a concubine, so there was no need to bother the doctor in the house. The ins and outs of the whole thing were basically clear now. It was just a routine. If she investigated carefully, she would definitely find some clues. However, whether she could find the mastermind behind the scenes in the end depended on that person's skills. What was more, Jingwan was curious about the role of the old maid who was locked in the woodshed in her courtyard in this matter. One thing was certain. She ran to her courtyard on the spur of the moment. Mama Gong had already investigated who she had met before she went to Begonia Elegant House. However, in Jingwan's opinion, if this matter was really her third aunt's doing, there might be no result in the end. Jingwan's eyes fell on her third aunt. She lowered her eyebrows and narrowed her eyes. There was no sadness or joy on her face. The expression in her eyes could not be seen clearly. Her whole person was quiet. It must be said that Madame Lu was a person with a sense of propriety. She knew that her grandmother did not like her very much, so she did not go forward to make trouble. In front of others she was not strong, but she was never weak. In the beginning, the other mistresses of the Luo family's inner court weren't sure if she was in control of the entire situation, or if the other yin-yangs were framing each other. However, after a long time, even if they still didn't have any evidence against her, they more or less had an idea. Madame Lu's face was naturally thicker than Luo Jingying's. You could never catch her fault on the surface. You could not see her gaffe unless she deliberately showed it. However, if she was really the same on the surface, then she would not have raised a daughter with Luo Jingying's temperament. In this ancient era, a mother's influence on their children, especially their daughters, was too great. If she did not have the memory of her previous life, perhaps she would have become as silly and sweet as Madame Zhang. Because when she was in Qian Prefecture, Jingwan was puzzled about this point. Taking advantage of the fact that children were not easy to be noticed, and she had a lot of time, she secretly watched Madame Lu for more than half a year. In this way, she discovered Madame Lu's unknown side. At that time, Jingwan was very surprised. If this person lived in a certain circle in her previous life, she would be like a fish in water. She would definitely get an Oscar. Madame Lu always regarded herself as the descendant of the founding duke. She could not see, or was unwilling to see the reality. But she was a very rational person. She never revealed her inner thoughts to others. To sum it up, she was a maidservant, but she had the dream of being a princess. After understanding Madame Lu's thoughts, Jingwan sometimes felt that it was ridiculous. Her third uncle was only a son of a concubine. Even if his grandparents passed away, when they separated he did not get much. Her third uncle's eyes were high, but his ability was mediocre. Madame Lu saw through him too clearly, so she pinned all her hopes on her children. If she really put all her thoughts on teaching the two children, she may not be unable to get what she wanted in the future. Unfortunately, her mind had long been crooked. She was always scheming, especially when she was the one who suppressed her daughter. She couldn't wait to be torn into pieces. Moreover, Madame Lu had a very strong sense of vanity and jealousy in her bones. If others were doing well, she would be unhappy. Luo Jingying had learned this from her. However, in the entire Luo family's backyard, only her mother was good at scheming. Unexpectedly, her mother was supported by her father. Even if someone splashed dirty water on her mother, her father would believe that she was pure and innocent. So Madame Lu didn't really make a move that many times. Jingwan didn't know what other people thought about this matter, but she felt that it was most likely Third Aunt's doing. She was as ruthless as ever. Who knew how long she had hidden these spies in Falling Plum House? If she dared to expose them, there was at least a 90% chance that she would frame her mother. It was fine if it was a normal matter, but when it came to his children, even if it was her father, he would definitely be unhappy. More importantly, Madame Zhang's image in the hearts of the servants was completely ruined. No matter how good she was in the past, they would all think that she was putting on an act and had a Buddha's mouth but a snake's heart. If it was a scheming person, this situation wouldn't be a big deal because she could suppress it and turn the tables. However, if it was Madame Zhang, her life would probably be difficult. Her purpose was not to kill Madame Zhang, because she knew very well that this was not enough to kill Madame Zhang. She just didn't want Madame Zhang to be free and happy all day, which would make Jingwan unhappy. Jingwan thought about it carefully. If this game was successful, it would really hit the snake at its weak point. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652935. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bikugo mobile reading website, bicken.com. Chapter 55. Because everyone had their own opinions, Madame Zhang protected the people in her courtyard and did not allow torture. And Madame Wang could not just hit Madame Bai's people. By the time Madame Luo and Jingwan arrived, the matter had already reached a deadlock. With their arrival, Madame Wang was not displeased. Instead, she seemed to be relieved. She really did not know what to do with someone as muddle-headed as her second sister-in-law. Faced with Madame Luo's question, she hesitated and looked at Madame Zhang. How could Madame Luo not understand? She said expressionlessly, "Find all the relatives of the related people in the house, and in front of them, flog them 10 times. If they still don't tell the truth, their whole family will be punished. If they still don't tell the truth, sell them." No one would have thought that Madame Luo would be so ruthless. "Mother," Madame Zhang hurriedly wanted to plead. "Shut up. You are the one who has the least right to speak now. If it weren't for your stupid and wooden-headed brain, would this have happened? If it weren't for the fact that I still have something to ask you to do, I would have grounded you for 3 years." Madame Luo was really angry. It was one thing for her to be hopelessly stupid, but she also always implicated others. Madame Luo had always been a good mother-in-law and never treated her daughter-in-law harshly. Even if she knew that Madame Lu was a two-faced and vicious woman, she still treated her indifferently and never made things difficult for her. Occasionally, when she encountered some things, she would secretly warn them. In front of so many people, it was definitely the first time that Madame Zhang was so merciless. Madame Zhang also didn't expect it to be like this. She felt wronged and cried, but she didn't dare to say a word. Jingwan stood next to Madame Luo. Seeing her mother like this, she couldn't do anything. After this incident, she hoped that she could learn a little bit, even if it was just a little bit. But even with such a low request, the hope was still slim. Most people only heard that Madame Luo blamed Madame Zhang. But some people also heard the trust in Madame Zhang's words. She clearly didn't believe that this was something that Madame Zhang could do. On the bed, Madame Bai was so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. She had met an unromantic husband, an innocent and stupid mistress, and a mother-in-law who looked kind but didn't care about concubines. No matter how many methods she had, she couldn't use them. Obviously, it was that idiot who occupied the position of the matriarch who caused her to lose her child. It was such an obvious thing, but no one believed it. She should not have been so careless. She should not have thought that that woman would not have the guts to do anything. The fact was, when a stupid dog bit people, it was even more ruthless. It could even hit you when you were not prepared. She should have listened to the advice of the bell, and not eaten the food sent by the Falling Plum House. The child that she had painstakingly gotten was gone just like that. The relevant people were gathered as quickly as possible. Everyone in the room was moved to the courtyard, including Madame Bai, who struggled to get up. Madame Luo did not comment on this, but Madame Zhang, seeing her pale face, wanted to persuade her. She seemed to have completely forgotten who was the one who said that she, Madame Zhang, was cruel and merciless, not even letting go of the unborn child in her belly. She was not just naive and sweet. In Jingwan's eyes, she was no different from the Virgin Mary. Fortunately, before Jingwan could do anything, Madame Zhang's mammy had already stopped her. Not to mention that Madame Bai had already recognized Madame Zhang as her enemy. Even if she didn't do this, Madame Bai was the matriarch and the other was a concubine. In front of the matriarch, she was like a maid. They were born to be at odds. No matter how well Madame Zhang did, and how many good things she gave, Madame Bai would not appreciate it. Now that Madame Bai tried to dissuade her at this time, Madame Bai might think that Madame Bai had ulterior motives, and wanted to take this opportunity to get rid of her confidant. Other than Kaylin, everyone else more or less had relatives. Even the Wondersuite that was bought from outside had been worshipped as a godmother in the Fu. However, it did not mean that Kaylin could escape the disaster. For a servant like her who had unknown origins, as the ruler of the backyard, Madame Wang would naturally find out their origins. Madame Bai was a distant niece of the Luo Rongyan. She was the daughter of a concubine, and was not favored. She was given away just like that, and did not have a close maid who had a deep relationship with her. Kaylin was also from her so-called uncle's family. From the moment Kaylin was sent to Madame Bai's side, their fates were closely linked. Madame Bai's methods were also extraordinary, so she quickly took Kaylin as her confidant. Madame Luo originally did not want to intervene, but Madame Zhang's performance made her change her mind. She decided to fiercely tidy up the backyard. If she did not properly knock some people down, would they really think that she was a decoration in the residence? They always made all kinds of trouble from time to time. Originally, Wan Wan was in a good mood because the good thing was about to happen, but someone was not sensible and wanted to ruin it. Madame Luo used a method that she would not use in the past. She directly took Luo Peishan's name card and asked people to go to the Luo Rongyan's house to ask for Kaylin. It was just a few servants, so the other party would not refuse to give face. Moreover, Kaylin was sent from their Fu. Now that there was a problem in the Luo family, they did not know the specific situation. It was inevitable that they could not help but wonder if something had happened in the Luo family. That was, they did not train them well. As a result, they could only hand over Kaylin in fear and trepidation. Although it was a gift from a superior to a subordinate, in fact, there was still the intention to curry favor. Luo Rongyan was not a good person, but his father was not to be underestimated. Jingwan carefully observed the expressions and reactions of the relevant people. She could conclude that Lamei was not involved in it. Although she reacted in panic, she was not guilty. Lamei was only 2 or 3 years older than Jingwan. She had been in contact with her when she was in Qianfu. Living in the capital for 3 years did not change her nature much. As for the other people, in fact, as long as they had enough experience, they basically knew what was going on. It was just that Kaylin's reaction was a little strange. Needless to say, Kaylin was afraid, but there was a trace of strange excitement mixed in. What was the secret behind it? She believed that she would soon know the answer. However, Madame Zhang's anxiety and Lamei's fear made Jingwan decide to intervene. If there was really no problem with the ingredients in Fallen Plum House, then the desserts must have been swapped. In this way, it was not difficult to prove Lamei's innocence. First Aunt, is the desserts left by Concubine Bai still here? Yes. Did you think of something? Madame Wang asked kindly. Jingwan nodded. There are a few desserts in Fallen Plum House. When I was in Qianfu, I made some small changes. The taste is different, especially the desserts made by Sister Lamei. The taste is especially good. I think the desserts that Concubine Bai wanted should be one of them, but I'm afraid that ordinary people can't taste them. For those who were used to all kinds of exquisite food, their mouths could more or less be considered as gluttons. It wasn't difficult for them to taste the subtle differences. As far as I know, Sister Lamei habitually makes more desserts. I think it's the same this time. The previous inquiry also proved that she did not do anything unusual in the process of making desserts. I just don't know if there are any other desserts left. Jingwan, a girl, appeared here. Although it was not particularly out of the ordinary, because she was the only girl in the boudoir, it was naturally abrupt. As soon as she spoke, almost everyone's eyes were focused on her. Many people understood the meaning of her words. Fortunately, the desserts left in the falling plum house had not been touched yet. Plum blossom cake. When Jingwan saw it, she smiled. This was their second branch's special dessert. Her father especially liked it. No wonder Madame Bai would choose this. Whether it was taken from fallen plum house or sent to Madame Bai, they all looked exactly the same. Not to mention the color and style. Even the texture was the same. No one doubted that this was made by two people. Thinking back to Jingwan's words, not only did it not clear Lamei's name, but it also made the people who originally trusted Lamei look at her with suspicion. Madame Bai wanted to pounce on her and eat her alive. Jingwan was indifferent. Try it and you'll know. As she spoke, she stretched out her hand. Madame Luo grabbed her hand. You little girl, how can you eat unclean things? The things inside are so powerful that ordinary people can't touch them? Could it be that the person behind the scenes was worried that ordinary methods could not guarantee a 100% success rate? So he used a heavy hand? Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652936. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bikago mobile reading website and bicken.com. Chapter 56. It's not that serious, but it's better if you don't touch it. Wang Shi smiled, but there was a different meaning in her smile. Jingwan understood. Just because it was not serious, it did not mean that it was completely useless. Something that was used to deal with children would probably have some influence in this aspect. As an unmarried girl, she naturally had to stay away from it. She did not care about it, but others would. Jingwan pretended that she did not understand and just did what an obedient child should do. Third girl, if you still trust eldest aunt's tongue, let eldest aunt taste it. Jingwan nodded. Wang Shi came from a noble family, so there was naturally no reason for her not to trust. Wang Shi picked up a piece of plum blossom cake, took a small bite, and chewed carefully. Mother, these two plum blossom cakes were indeed made by two people. Although if I did not deliberately taste it carefully, I'm afraid that I would be deceived. This one was made by Lamei. I can be sure that I have tasted her cooking not long ago. Wang Shi gave a positive answer, and there was no problem with the plum blossom cake in Luomei house. In that case, Lamei will be exempted from punishment for the time being. Stand aside. Even if she was innocent, it did not matter if she was beaten a few times. Not to mention a servant. Even if it fell on her own children and grandchildren, Madame Luo would not frown. She spoke out of punishment because of Jingwan. She might cut off Luo Peishan's face, but she would not treat Jingwan like this. Mother, think. Madame Luo cast a sharp look at her. Zhang Shi, who did not learn her lesson, silently shut up. However, she still fearlessly asked someone to bring Lamei over and comforted her with a few words. Although she had long known that Madame Luo was biased to Jingwan, she also let some people see her almost bottomless tolerance, care, and love for her. However, in the future, if her Luo Jingwan does something that endangers the Luo family, I don't believe that you, this damned old woman, will still be so unprincipled to protect her. As the ringtone's relatives hadn't arrived yet, she was left until the end. Because she was the last, the fear in her heart was also the heaviest. The people in front of her were mercilessly beaten. Perhaps they deliberately didn't have their mouths gagged, but the screams lingered in her ears. The bloody scene clearly didn't land on her, but she seemed to feel the bone-piercing pain in advance. Only half of the 10 strikes had passed, and Luo had confessed. She said that she was the one who changed the desserts, and the reason why no one found out along the way was that the food box she used had been tampered with in advance. There was a sandwich inside, and the plum blossom cake with the dirty stuff was made by her personally. She had learned a lot about making desserts from Lame, especially the plum blossom cake. She had secretly put in a lot of effort to reach the level of passing off as genuine. Luer's words made everyone in Luo Mei House feel incredulous, especially Madame Zhang, who was hit hard. She liked Luer very much. She was delicate and lively, not careless in doing things, and had a kind heart. Why? Madame Zhang almost lost her soul as she asked. This servant just couldn't bear to see concubine by being so arrogant in the past. Madame treated her well wholeheartedly, but she didn't think about returning the favor. It was fine if she didn't think about stepping on Madame's head, especially after she became pregnant. She relied on the piece of flesh in her belly to order around Madame's sisters like little servant girls. This servant was angry and had evil thoughts. Madame, this servant knows that she was wrong. This servant will accept any punishment, but please don't implicate this servant's family. They don't know anything. Luer stubbornly knelt, her eyes begging again. What a loyal and righteous servant. Other than the direct victim, Madame Bai, the other masters would probably like such a servant. Sure enough, not only Madame Zhang, but even Madame Luo's expression softened a little. However, that was all. Even if concubine Bai was only half a master, the child in her belly was a real master. Harming a master's life, no matter how big of a reason one had, one would not be easily let off. Moreover, no one was a fool. They couldn't just believe everything Luer said. Whether it was true or false still needed to be verified. Madame Wang asked Luer some questions in detail, such as how she got those things that normal people in the inner courtyard wouldn't have, who helped her, and how she knew the use of those things. Perhaps because she knew that at this point, it didn't matter whether she said it or not, Luer said everything she knew. She answered whatever was asked. Even if she was repeatedly asked, she still spoke clearly, and without any contradictions or omissions. In that case, there seemed to be no need to interrogate anyone else. Madame Wang was also prepared to punish Luer severely. She directly called the slave traitor, and was prepared to sell her far away as a guilty slave. However, at this moment, Luer's family members suddenly rushed forward and knelt in front of Madame Zhang. They kowtowed loudly. Madame, please have mercy and save Luer. Luer did such a foolish thing because of you, and was branded as a guilty slave. Luer's life is over. Ever since Luer came to your side, she has served you with all her heart. Can you bear to see her being trampled on? Madame, I beg you. Madame Zhang was innocent and unaffected. She had a soft and kind personality, and easily trusted others. This was well known in the inner courtyard of the Luo family. These people firmly grasped this point and used it. They knew that she would not stand by and do nothing, but they pointed out that if she did not save Luer, she would be harsh and ungrateful. Originally, Madame Zhang would have taken the initiative to help, but she was forced to do it for her own reputation. The nature of this was completely different. Moreover, in this way, she had no choice but to save Luer. It was like putting her on the fire. Luer, who was originally quite calm, finally felt afraid when she learned that she was going to be branded as a guilty slave. She did not dare to ignore Madame Zhang's pleas, and expressed her sincerity. She said that even if she did not contribute, she had worked hard. She also repeatedly emphasized the reason why she did wrong. Madame Zhang was already prepared to disregard everything and plead for to Madame Luo. But these people did not give her a chance to speak. She was at a loss and hurriedly told them, "Stop kowtowing and get up." However, these words did not work at all. Until now, she still did not understand her situation. In this matter, no matter what she did, it would not be good for her. Needless to say, what would happen if she did not save Luer? But if she did save Luer, even if she did not achieve her goal, she would plead for the murderer who killed her husband's child. What was going on? Was her husband's child not worth as much as the life of a servant? Or was it that Madame Zhang wanted to take advantage of the situation and get rid of her dissidents? There would be estrangement between Madame Zhang and the Luo Rongyan. Jingwan looked on coldly, and became more and more certain that there was something going on here. It was definitely not as simple as it seemed. From the beginning to the end, the other party's goal was to target Madame Zhang. They were determined to taint her and step on her as much as they could. While everyone's attention was focused on Madame Zhang and Luer's family, Jingwan did not let go of other places and tried to find clues. After all, even if Jingwan was very good at judging people, she could not read too much from a person's expression. She was not a professional in this field. However, her efforts paid off. She finally found something else. After carefully sizing up Luer again, she thought of another possibility. As for the result, she would know with a try. Enough, all of you, shut up. The begging stopped abruptly and looked at Jingwan in unison. Jingwan was still the same as when she first arrived. Her expression was dark and indifferent. Jingwan looked inquiringly at Madame Luo and Madame Wang. After getting their nod of agreement, she asked Luer calmly, "Do you like plum blossoms?" Luer did not understand and nodded honestly. Many people knew that she liked plum blossoms. She liked to embroider many of her personal things with plum blossoms. "I like them. My father likes gold and stone more than flowers and trees. However, he has a special liking for plum blossoms, and is also very fond of plum blossoms cakes. Third miss, don't slander me. There are many people in the world who like plum blossoms. Is second master the only one who likes them?" Luer refuted quickly and fiercely. Her attitude was so fierce that it made people speechless. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652937. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website: mbicken.com. Chapter 57. Luer's face turned pale. What she said just now was simply a confession out of guilt and desperation. Luer wanted to explain herself, but Jingwan did not give her a chance. She got someone to bring water and went to the falling plum house to get some plum blossom petals that she had collected a few days ago. Luer's hands were pressed into the water and washed roughly. The water was a little muddy. It was obvious that her hands were covered with a thick layer of powder. Seeing that her hands were covered with light red dots, Jingwan had an expression that said she had expected it. She then got someone to rub the plum blossom petals on Luer's arms, neck, and even face. No. Luer struggled with all her might. The petals were like poisonous snakes and ferocious beasts, making her extremely terrified. Everyone else looked at each other. Jingwan continued to look at her coldly. She did not show any other expression, because she had expected this. Very soon, red rashes appeared on Luer's body. Luer howled. "It hurts, it itches." She was probably afraid of hurting her delicate skin, so she did not dare to scratch it. However, in the end, she could not hold herself back and did it. Now that she had started, she could not care less. Streaks of bloody marks appeared on her skin, looking very frightening. If you don't stop her, her face will really be ruined. When that time comes, you won't be able to wait for a good price. Jingwan's words woke Luer's family up. They quickly went forward to grab Luer. At this point, everyone understood that Luer could not touch plum blossom petals. Think about it. If something could cause harm to oneself, then it was natural that such a thing would be hated. However, there was someone who showed extreme love for such a thing. Whether it was true love or fake love, there must be a reason. I didn't expect that there would be more than one person in the Luo family who likes to torture themselves. Jingwan glanced at the Lu family and said calmly. Previously, Luo Jingying had been torturing herself psychologically. Now Luer was torturing herself physically. In fact, Mrs. Lu should be counted as well. Instead of living a good life, she insisted on making things difficult for herself, and then wanted to drag others down with her. Mrs. Lu happened to see Jingwan's meaningful glance. Her heart jumped. She always felt that Jingwan could see through her. She had a creepy feeling. However, after thinking about it, she felt that it shouldn't be that bad. Even the old madam only knew a little about her. She was just a little girl. No matter how capable she was, that was all. Thus, she suppressed the uneasiness in her heart. Jingwan didn't need to do anything after that. Madame Zhang's nannies would take care of it, secretly spying on the male master, persecuting the concubine, and framing the mistress. Clearly, she had the heart of a snake and scorpion, yet she dared to boast shamelessly that she was doing it for the mistress. In order to get Madame Zhang out of the picture, naturally, she couldn't give Lu Er a chance to refute. She pointed out some of Lu Er's daily trifles one by one. For example, she liked to embroider plum blossoms on things she used, but she didn't break them. She also said that it bloomed on a branch and everyone saw it. It was better to share it with others than to share it with others. However, these remarks were occasionally heard by the second young master. She also said that some of her words and deeds didn't seem to be important, but when linked together, her intentions were clear. Lu Er couldn't refute it at all. At first, Madame Zhang's nannies only wanted to help Madame Zhang. As she spoke, she became more and more angry, because she wasn't making things up. It turned out that there were signs so early, but she didn't notice it. She even left such a poisonous snake by the madame's side. Madame Zhang didn't dare to believe that the final result of the matter would be like this. She thought that although she didn't know the people around her a lot, she could still pat her chest and guarantee that she treated them well. She also never asked them to repay her. Instead, she received kindness with enmity. For a moment, she was disheartened. Her nature for decades couldn't be changed just because she said so. If Madame Zhang really became a qualified mistress of the inner house, she wouldn't be hers anymore. Her happiness, and even her friendship with Luo Rongyan would be completely erased. Jingwan sometimes hoped that her mother could change, but in fact, she never tried to do anything. Even if sometimes her role was reversed with Madame Zhang, she didn't care. She didn't expect Madame Zhang to do anything for her, and she didn't need it. As for Jingwan, deep in her heart she thought, just let it be like this. It's fine as long as Madame Zhang maintains her nature. She can always find a way to protect her for a lifetime of peace and prosperity. Previously, she had been ignoring Madame Zhang. At this time, she walked forward and said, "Mother, don't think too much. It's fine as long as you have a clear conscience." Madame Zhang's fragile heart was instantly comforted. Although she was still sad about Lu Er's actions, she didn't continue to have a hopeless expression. Her daughter was right. She had a clear conscience. She wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, straightened her back, and resumed the posture of a pampered noble lady. Without comparison, there was no way to distinguish good from bad. Not only did Madame Zhang not fulfill her duty as a mother, but she was also cared for and sheltered by her own daughter. Thinking about her own daughter, including Madame Wang's married daughter, Madame Wang still had to worry about them. Not to mention Madame Lu, who had a daughter like Luo Jingying. Not only did she plan for her all day long, but she also had to clean up her messes from time to time. How much time could she spend on herself? She didn't expect Lu Er to take care of her in turn. Why was Madame Zhang so lucky? Madame Wang's heart was bitter. Madame Wu also wondered if her daughter would be so considerate in the future. As for Madame Lu, she still looked calm on the surface, but her heart was full of holes from the devil of jealousy. She didn't know when it would be completely corroded, and she would lose her mind, and do something even crazier. The matter could be said to be full of twists and turns, but the perpetrator was indeed Lu Er. There was no doubt about this. It was naturally impossible for things to end like this. Jingwan would not allow it. She had to take this opportunity to pull out all the nails in Madame Lu's heart. As for people like Madame Luo and Madame Wang, after being reminded by Jingwan, they thought that there was more to this matter. After all, Lu Er was a little girl who was a bit scheming and inexperienced. She had always been well-behaved, and did some small things very secretly. Otherwise, even if Madame Zhang didn't notice it, there was no reason why the people around her didn't notice it. But Lu Er suddenly became ruthless. Perhaps someone said something to her, or perhaps promised her something. Jingwan looked at Madame Luo, and Madame Luo happened to look over as well. When Jingwan saw the other party nod slightly, she already understood that her grandmother wanted to help her investigate to the end. Jingwan gently nodded in response. She naturally appreciated her grandmother's protection. After all, she was a girl in the boudoir. It was one thing to be a bystander, but it was another thing to completely intervene. Some families clearly needed a capable daughter-in-law. But before matchmaking for their children, if they heard that the girl was very capable in the boudoir, then they would not be happy. It was such a contradiction. Jingwan felt that although her marriage was almost settled, it was better not to have a fierce reputation. Jingwan had always thought of herself as a gentle girl. That's right, that was it. Although Lu'er was held down, her face was already scratched. Although the wound was not deep, if she did not take care of it properly, it would leave a very ugly scar. Appearance was really too important for a girl. Moreover, Lu'er's appearance was above average, and she also had her own ambitions. It could be imagined how much she valued her face. Destroying her face was more serious than taking her life. After the initial pain, her heart was filled with the desire to die. However, even if she wanted to die, she could not live anymore. After that, when she looked at Jingwan, her eyes were engraved with deep hatred. From her point of view, it was Jingwan who saw through her and destroyed her face. She had never seen such a vicious person. She opened her mouth and wanted to scold her. However, her family naturally would not let her have her way, and hurriedly covered her mouth. Now that things had come to this, her daughter had no value, but she could not implicate her family because of her. Jingwan turned a blind eye to her resentment. Some people were just like that. They would never look for a reason from themselves. If it wasn't for the fact that she was the one who made the first move, even if she had some thoughts that she shouldn't have, no one would care about her. Jingwan knew that she should never underestimate small people. Whether it was in the history of her previous life or the history of this life, people who fell into the hands of small people could be found everywhere. However, people like Lu'er, who had a family and servants, lived in the harem. It was not that she was looking down on her, but even if she was lucky enough to survive after this incident, she would not be able to make any waves. Moreover, Jingwan lowered her head slightly. Her grandmother was a person who did not leave behind any future troubles. Although she had never done anything ruthless in front of her, she knew. Digression. As for the female lead's mother, the character setting was like this. If the relatives did not like her, they could just ignore her. In the future, they would write less about her. Also, the relatives expressed that they did not like the inner house fights. Although the main focus of the novel was the inner house fights, in fact, there would not be much inner house fights. The author was not good at writing inner house fights. Just these few people from the Luo family, they would have to be dealt with. https://www.yanguiwo.com/11/11807/6652938. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.yanguiwo.com. Bikago mobile reading website, yanguiwo.com. Chapter 58. She had just witnessed Madame Luo's ruthlessness and decisiveness, and now she was witnessing her gentleness and tolerance. Madame Luo had someone bring Lu'er in front of her, and looked at her condescendingly. Lu'er, who had a fierce expression just now, was now trembling uncontrollably. I'll give you a chance. Tell me everything you've been hiding, and I'll give you a bottle of Yulu ointment. Yulu ointment had a miraculous effect on removing scars. During the reign of the late emperor, it had helped one of the late emperor's favored concubines to remove a terrifying scar, and thus became famous. However, that ointment was very expensive and very rare. It was almost exclusively used by the favored concubines in the palace. Before this, no one knew that Madame Luo had such an ointment, but since she said she had it, no one doubted her. Luo revealed a look of pleasant surprise. Madam, are you serious? Are you doubting me? Madame Luo said lightly. No. Luo hurriedly denied. Then, without thinking too much about it, she was afraid that Madame Luo would go back on her word. Like spilling beans, She rattled off the parts she had been hiding without stopping. She did not think at all about what would happen to the people she had implicated. Nor did she think about whether she would have the fortune to enjoy the Yulu ointment, even if she obtained it. The only remaining thought in her mind was that her face would not be disfigured, and that she would still be as beautiful as before. Sure enough, Luer's thoughts had been known by someone, and then she had been instigated intentionally or unintentionally. In this way, another person had been implicated. In addition to the person who had helped Luer before, there were a total of 4 people. The gatekeeper, the front yard, the backyard, and the falling plum house. They were really connected. Were the 3 people from before purely because they had been bribed by Luer to help her? Or were they instructed by someone to make things convenient for her? No matter what the situation was, she caught them all. Perhaps because she was angry, she did not ask anything, and gave them a good beating first. Not to mention that they had only helped a little, and did not do anything wrong. But they had brought those dirty things into the backyard. Whether they had known about it or not, it was a huge mistake. All of them were either begging for mercy, or yelling that they had been wronged. That miserable and bloody scene made many servants keep quiet out of fear. They only knew that the old madam was a kind person, but they didn't expect that when she was ruthless, she was even more frightening than the first madam they had always respected. They all shrank their necks, and didn't dare to breathe loudly. They only silently warned themselves that in the future, they must know their place, and don't be blinded by greed. Otherwise, it would be their turn next time. Similarly, they were sold under the name of a guilty slave. As a result, even those who truly didn't know the truth would be able to reveal some of the dark secrets of the inner residence. Aside from the 4th branch, everyone in the 3rd branch was exposed. The 2nd branch was the least exposed, and most of the information came from Concubine Bai. Now, other than Madame Wu and Madame Zhang, who still didn't have any self-awareness, many people's expressions turned ugly. Jingwan glanced at Mrs. Liu. The matter that was exposed had nothing to do with her, but because it involved the concubines of the 3rd branch, she felt ashamed. Oh, sure enough, she was the king of acting. Few people could compare to her. Gong Mama came over with the servant who was detained in the Begonia house. Then, all the women of Kaling's family arrived. The men and the other men of the Luo family's servants were all guarded outside the 2nd gate. Madame Luo ordered people to take the main related personnel away, and carefully interrogate them. They had to clearly explain what they knew. If they pointed out other people, and there was no discrepancy between their confessions, they could be exempted from being sold. If they were meritorious, they would be rewarded with an additional 10 to 100 taels of silver. The head servant's monthly salary was only 1 tael of silver, so this reward was definitely a huge sum of money. After coercion and temptation, the result quickly became clear. Unexpectedly, the person behind the scenes turned out to be Concubine Hua of the 3rd branch, Luo Jingqiang's biological mother. Even Kaling, who was by Madame Bai's side, was bribed by her. It turned out that the reason why Madame Bai acted so quickly was that Kaling added something to the first piece of snack she gave her. The servant girl who passed the message to Madame Zhang was also arranged by her. The servant who went to Jingwan's courtyard was the one who provided Lu with the prescription for those dirty things. She was also the key person to contact both sides. Before Gong Mama brought her here, she told her that her grandson's whereabouts had been found in a surprisingly short time. The reason why Kaling betrayed her master was that she received 100 taels of silver. Her good-for-nothing younger brother, who was always causing trouble, went to gambling dens and brothels at a young age. He owed a lot of debt and was found. Her parents didn't want to be kicked out of the house by the main family, so they made a scene and used filial piety to force their daughters. They said that they would buy out their relationship with them for 100 taels of silver, and never look for them again in the future. Kaling knew that her master, Madame Bai, couldn't help her. Concubine Hua was brought over, and Luo Jingqiang, who insisted on following, was also brought over. Concubine Hua didn't have any makeup on. There were obvious wrinkles at the corners of her eyes, but her facial features were small and delicate. She was a beauty. Looking at it carefully, Luo Jingqiang looked more like her father. Concubine Hua was neither sad nor happy. Her eyes were exceptionally calm, as if she had already expected this situation. She quietly knelt in front of Madame Luo and calmly admitted all her sins. Because she was angry with the main mother, Madame Lu, for embezzling her daughter's dowry. She had the idea of revenge. Because she accidentally heard Madame Lu complaining about Madame Zhang's good fortune, she used this as an excuse to plot against the second branch and tried to frame Madame Lu. However, her ability was limited and she didn't succeed. Madame Luo, this concubine knows that her sins are serious, but second young lady really didn't know anything. Please, for the sake of her being your granddaughter, let her marry in a dignified manner. Don't let this sinner affect her. Concubine Hua looked at Madame Luo with tears in the corners of her eyes. The depths of her eyes were filled with sadness and pleading. She was sincere, no longer as calm as before. Naturally, Jingwan had known about Concubine Hua for a long time. In the early years, Concubine Hua had fought with the Lu matriarch many times, but she was able to survive until now and raise Luo Jingqiang. It could be seen that she was not a simple person. However, as she gradually lived in seclusion, her sharp edges were mostly erased, and she became transparent. Moreover, she was a good mother. At the same time, Madame Lu also hurriedly knelt down and apologized, saying that she didn't really want to embezzle Luo Jingqiang's dowry. It was just because she was angry with her father. She didn't want to cause such a tragedy. Madame Luo fixed her eyes on the two of them. For a moment, the scene was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone was waiting for Madame Luo's final decision. Luo Jingqiang covered her mouth with a handkerchief and didn't dare to cry out. She knew a lot of things, but she couldn't say it or do it. Otherwise, her life with her concubine would be even more difficult. From now on, Concubine Hua will be grounded until second young lady gets married. Then, she will move to Zhuangzi and never return. Third son's wife didn't discipline her properly, so she will be fined a year's salary. In addition, your third branch will add 30% of second young lady's dowry in addition to the public money. I will personally look at the list of dowry. Madame Bai had a miscarriage and injured her body. She will recuperate in her courtyard. Don't come out if you have nothing to do. As for the others, it's up to you whether to reward or punish them. She walked straight away. Madame Luo didn't even call Jingwan. It could be seen that she was really angry. Jingwan thought about it and still didn't follow. First, Madame Bai lost her child. Then she was betrayed. Now she was grounded in disguise. In a fit of anger, she really fainted. Madame Lu knelt on the ground for a long time and didn't move. People who didn't know would think that she was distressed by the extra money. But in Jingwan's view, she was not only distressed, but also reflecting on herself. She was reflecting that she didn't do it carefully enough. She went for wool and came home shorn. Although she considered that she might be found out and found a scapegoat, in the end, she was indeed picked out perfectly. She also removed the thorn in Concubine Hua's side for many years. However, she didn't achieve her original goal. Instead, she was warned by Madame Luo and lost a lot of money. Jingwan was very curious. How did Madame Lu's heart become so twisted? But she didn't show it on her face at all. Madame Wang always had her own set of principles. Rewards and punishments were clear, but she also considered what Madame Luo said. Rewards were rewards, punishments were punishments. The two sides didn't offset each other. Those who should be beaten were beaten. Those who should be sold were sold. And those who should be sold were sold. And those who were 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 sold were not kept. It could be said that she was merciless and benevolent. Jingwan asked Madame Zhang's servants to take her back, indicating that they should comfort her. In fact, Jingwan was not very worried about her. Her mother was easy to be sad, but sometimes she was open-minded. A maidservant wouldn't really hurt her. After a while she would be fine. To put it nicely, she was open-minded. To put it bluntly, she was heartless. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652939. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Mobile edition reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 59. When Mrs. Lu turned around, there was a kind smile on her face. What's the matter, third girl? Jingwan was a little embarrassed. She pursed her lips and smiled. Speaking of which, there's a small matter that I'm sorry about. When that old woman shouted about concubine Bai's matter to me, not only did she dirty the ears of Ding General Manor's sister-son, but she also dirted the ears of fourth sister. After hearing such a dirty thing, fourth sister's heart must be uneasy. Third aunt, I'm afraid you'll have to spend some time to persuade her. Mrs. Lu's eyes darkened. Suspect her? Warn her? Remind her? If you don't say it, I'm afraid I'll really be kept in the dark. It's also my fault. I spoil your fourth sister too much. I don't let her know anything. If she can be half as smart as you, I should pray to Buddha. Her tone was very helpless. Was she mocking her for knowing all kinds of dirty things at such a young age? Fourth sister is lucky. Even if she doesn't know anything for the rest of her life, it doesn't matter. Third aunt will always worry about her. I can't do it. If I don't know anything, won't I be bullied to death? As a mother, worrying about her daughter for the rest of her life. If it wasn't cursing her daughter to have a short life, what was it? No matter how good Mrs. Lu was at pretending, at this time, she stopped smiling. Third girl, are you saying that your mother is not good? My mother is naturally good, but grandmother said that she is lucky. She doesn't know anything. There's no other way. As children we are self-reliant. Maybe fourth sister will be like my mother in the future. That's really enviable. With Luo Jingying's temper, even if she met a good husband, she couldn't live as carefree as Mrs. Zhang. It was said that if she was unhappy she asked for it. Looking for trouble all day long, no matter how deep the feelings were, they would disappear. Mrs. Lu still wanted to say something, but Jingwan didn't want to be long-winded with her. I think third aunt still has things to do. After all, second sister will be married soon. Third aunt still has to add to her dowry. It's not easy work. Niece is going to see grandmother, so I'll take my leave first. Jingwan bent her knees, turned to the road of the main courtyard, and walked away. Concubine Hua and Luo Jingqiang were silent, but the servants who followed them lowered their heads. They couldn't wait to find a hole to hide and disappear in front of Mrs. Lu. Mrs. Lu was silent for a moment, but in the end, she didn't say anything. When she returned to the territory of the third branch, Mrs. Lu was about to call Concubine Hua and Luo Jingqiang. But Concubine Hua spoke first. Foreign. The second young lady's dowry hasn't been embroidered yet. The Buddhist scriptures that Foreign ordered this servant to copy for the old Foreign haven't been finished. This concubine is now a sinner. I'll take my leave first. Facing them in her own territory, Mrs. Lu naturally won't pretend anymore. Looking at the mother and daughter in front of her, her eyes were full of poison. But now, Concubine Hua helped her take the blame, and got what she wanted. She was not afraid at all. She slightly raised her head, and looked at Mrs. Lu. After Mrs. Lu married into the Luo family, except for the first 1 or 2 years, no one in the third branch dared to provoke her like this. However, she really can't touch the mother and daughter now. If Concubine Hua was desperate at this time, even if she didn't admit it, she would be greatly affected. I hope that the second young lady will have a good life in her husband's family in the future, and won't need her family. Regarding Mrs. Lu's threat, Concubine Hua didn't comment. Master Luo was healthy, and had more than 1 or 2 years of life. As long as her grandfather was still alive, Chang'er's husband's family would treat her well. Besides, even if her daughter was not good in learning, she was definitely much better than Luo Jingying in dealing with people. She believed that her daughter would have a good life. And no matter how bad it was better than living in the hands of Mrs. Lu. Thank you for your kind words. Mrs. Lu coldly sent them away. Concubine Hua. After returning, Luo Jingqiang couldn't stop crying in front of Mrs. Hua. Silly girl, why are you crying? Mrs. Hua hugged Luo Jingqiang, and gently patted her back. It's all my fault. If it weren't for me, Concubine Hua wouldn't be threatened by her. and wouldn't be driven out of the Luo family. It's nothing. It's not like you don't know her character. She can't wait to get rid of those who are in her way. Luo Jingqiang leaned on her shoulder and cried for a long time before slowly stopping. Concubine Hua, wait for me. I will find a way to bring you back. You're talking nonsense again. Your grandmother said that I will never come back. How can I come back? In fact, old madam is not punishing me, but helping me. Although she doesn't like concubine Hua, it doesn't mean that she is unreasonable. I'm afraid she's very clear about who's behind today's incident. I don't have that much ability, nor do I have that much money to gather so many people in the Luo family's backyard. Actually, old madam isn't the only one who knows about this. That Zhuangzi is the Luo family's Zhuangzi, not hers. She can't even reach out and criticize me. In this way, I will be the only master there. Isn't it better than being tortured by her in the backyard? Moreover, old madam will personally ask about your dowry, which is something that concubine Hua didn't dare to think about. Now concubine Hua is just waiting for you to get married, and concubine Hua has no other ideas. Concubine Hua, you just live a good life in the future. Don't think too much. Also, if possible, get closer to your third sister. It will only be good for you. But she knows that old madam is unhappy, but she still deliberately used my dowry to stab old madam. Didn't she think that old madam might vent her anger on us? It was impossible to say that she didn't feel resentful when she heard Jingwan's words before. That's because your third sister knows that old madam won't do anything to us. Your third sister has been steady since she was a child. She has always had a sense of propriety. Even if it's a servant, she won't be tired. Except for fourth young lady. She has never said harsh words to anyone. Your third sister was taught by old madam. Old madam can be said to be the wisest woman concubine Hua has ever seen. Concubine Hua, I know what to do. Concubine Hua knows that Chang'er is a well-behaved girl. Don't learn from Luo Jingying. You're so arrogant that you can't see the reality. You're smart, but you're often the victim of your own cleverness. Mrs. Lu asked someone to call Luo Jingying to the front. She didn't say anything, and just looked at her with a gloomy face. When Luo Jingying came back from Begonia House, she was very nervous. Now that she saw her mother like this, she was scared. Her usual arrogant, flamboyant, elegant and confident girl was completely gone. She became a bit timid. However, the more Luo Jingwan behaved like this, the angrier the Lu matriarch got. Even if she was in the wrong, she should not lower her head. She should maintain her composure, but look at her now. She was so timid that she could not even compare to those country bumpkins who came from a small place and had never seen the world. She thought about Luo Jingwan, who was calm in the face and did everything appropriately. Even if her words were sarcastic, she could not find fault with them on the surface. That was the Lu matriarch's ideal daughter. Then, she thought about the losses she had suffered today, and the anger she had suppressed could no longer be controlled. Luo Jingying staggered and almost fell to the ground. She felt a burning pain on her face. In addition, she sprained her neck. But she didn't feel the pain. She was stunned. Her appearance didn't make Mrs. Lu feel sorry for her. Instead, her eyes began to become bloodshot. She looked like a female beast that was about to lose her mind. The mama next to Mrs. Lu saw that something was wrong. She quickly asked someone to take Luo Jingying out and hugged Mrs. Lu. Luo Jingying, who was outside, heard the commotion inside. She slowly came back to her senses and covered her red and swollen face. She had never been hit since she was a child, let alone her mother, who treated her like a treasure. Even if she felt that her mother's mood was not right, she didn't know how to react. In addition to pain, she felt wronged. She felt very wronged. There was also an unspeakable resentment. She didn't know who this resentment was directed at. The room gradually quieted down. Mrs. Lu didn't call Luo Jingying to come in. Instead, she asked a maidservant to come out and tell her to go back to her courtyard and reflect on her mistakes. There was no time limit. Even though Luo Jingying came back to her senses, she was still a little absent-minded. Her mind was in a mess and she needed to calm down. Therefore, she didn't say anything and obediently went back. https://www.bikin com/11/11807/6652940. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 60. Jingwan went to the main courtyard. Regarding this matter, she did not mention a word to Madame Luo. Concubine Bai, on the other hand, could be said to be the most unlucky and suffered the most. Originally, she hoped that Luo Rongyan would come back to see her and comfort her gently and considerately. She also thought about how to use this opportunity to win his pity. Unfortunately, no matter how much she thought about it, it was in vain. Luo Rongyan did not come back until the evening. He was drunk and was directly sent to Falling Plum House. When the accident happened, it was unknown whether the servant who went to find him reported it to him or not. After Madame Bai heard this, she was so angry that she burst into tears. The things in the room were completely smashed, and the servants around her were all angered by her. They directly threw things at them. Being smashed was considered light, but the closer they were to her, the more serious the injury. Because of the ringtone incident, she felt that everyone was playing tricks behind her back. She cursed and scolded crazily. Concubine Ping, who was in the same courtyard, did not make a sound and pretended not to hear anything. Concubine Ji could not bear it. Although her two daughters also lived alone in a courtyard, they were separated from their courtyard by only one wall. With Madame Bai making such a ruckus, it was difficult for the two sisters to pretend not to hear. Concubine Ji was very angry. If her two daughters were led astray, she would tear Madame Bai alive. However, Madame Bai was now a lunatic. If she went to the door now, she did not know what would happen. She could only swallow her anger. She turned and went to her two daughters. Similar situations like this would happen from time to time in the backyard of many noble houses in the capital. The real lively place was the backyard of the third branch. Madame Lu finally recovered a little. Before she could completely calm down, a servant reported that the third master had returned and brought a woman, a very beautiful woman. Madame Lu had long been accustomed to this kind of thing. She did not care much at first. However, what happened next made her anger rise again. That woman did not come to see her immediately. Luo Rongping arranged a courtyard for her alone. If that was all, it would be fine. Luo Rongping sent his own people to serve that woman. In the past, the women who entered the backyard of the third branch were all arranged by her. If Luo Rongping cared, at most he would say a few words. But this time, he clearly showed that he treated that woman differently. He was protecting that woman. This was an unprecedented threat. Mrs. Lu cheered herself up. She wanted to see that woman. She wanted to see what kind of beauty she was. She wanted to see Luo Rongping, a man who valued power more than anything else, no longer cared about his reputation, and wanted to tear his face with her. Madame Lu took a large group of people to kill. The small courtyard was originally well decorated. The servants were busy going in and out. When they saw Madame Lu, many people could not help but tremble. Those who were closer to her had to bite the bullet and salute her. Those who were far away saw that the situation was not good, and directly took a detour. The first room to be cleaned up was the outer room of the bedroom. Under the warm candlelight, Luo Rongping was holding a woman gently and carefully. Although that woman was still some distance away from being able to cause the downfall of a country, she was indeed a first-class beauty, gentle, coquettish, and lovable. Looking at Luo Rongping, her eyes were full of deep affection and admiration. It seemed that he was her everything. Without him, she could not live alone. The deep affection between the two of them instantly pierced Mrs. Lu's heart. Before she got married, although Madame Lu did not like Luo Rongping, when things were settled, she also imagined that her husband would treat her wholeheartedly, protect her, and pamper her. Unfortunately, when he found out that his Tongfang was pregnant, he stubbornly refused to let that woman have an abortion. On the second day of her marriage, he wanted her to promote that woman to a concubine. All of her beautiful fantasies were instantly shattered. Luo Rongping was the same as her. He was dissatisfied with this marriage. From the beginning, The two of them treated each other with respect. But because each of them had their own desires, they only maintained the superficial relationship between husband and wife. Between them, there was not even a moment of tenderness. You brought someone back. Why didn't you tell this concubine? Now you have to personally arrange it. Isn't this concubine's fault? Seeing the two of them whispering sweet nothings to each other, Madame Lu put on a fake smile and said. That woman seemed to be startled by Madame Lu's sudden words. She suddenly raised her head and then hurriedly got up. This concubine greets Madame. Madame Lu's mouth twitched. Just as she was about to speak, Luo Rongping leisurely raised his head and swept a glance at her. His eyes were obviously cold. Be careful. Don't hurt the child in your belly. Madame is a virtuous and magnanimous woman. She will definitely not pay attention to etiquette at this juncture. Listen to what he was saying. Was she really virtuous, or just pretending to be magnanimous? Didn't he know Luo Rongping? Didn't she hear that it was a sarcastic warning? She didn't say anything or do anything, but he was already protecting her. And this woman was pregnant. At that moment, Madame Lu was so angry that her blood almost rushed to her heart. At the same time, she felt a chill run from the soles of her feet to the top of her head. Madame Lu thought that she knew Luo Rongping's character very well. It was impossible for him to fall in love with a woman. But now reality slapped her in the face. It wasn't that this man didn't know how to fall in love with a woman, but he hadn't met that woman yet. Although this woman was hypocritical, pretentious, and foxy in her eyes, a man who fell in love with a woman was unreasonable. It was easy for him to spoil his concubine and neglect his wife, even if she didn't know how long his love would last. Madame Lu felt an unprecedented fear. She wasn't sure how far Luo Rongping would go for this woman. She was able to gain a foothold in the Luo family and do whatever she wanted in the third branch because of Luo Rongping's indifference. Although she disdained and was unwilling to accept it, she had to admit that if a woman didn't have a strong family, she still had to rely on her husband's support. But when this man not only didn't support her, but also helped another woman, even if she had 1,000 abilities and 10,000 means, it was useless. Compromise? Should she put down her pride and compete with these vixens for his favor, and beg him to lower his curtain? She wanted to be strong for half of her life, but she couldn't do it. Especially when she didn't have a good impression of this man. She wanted to dominate him, because he was her legal wife. Even if she didn't want him, no one else could touch him. She wanted to dominate him for the sake of her children's future. That woman gently pushed Luo Rongping's hand away and smiled embarrassedly. Foreign is virtuous, but this lowly concubine can't be arrogant because of your favor. She looked at Madame Lu. She looked like a weak willow branch in the wind, but she still respectfully bowed. This lowly concubine originally wanted to serve tea with Foreign, but if I go now, I'm afraid that I will disturb Foreign's rest. I didn't want Foreign to go personally. This lowly concubine is really guilty. I hope Foreign can forgive me. The corner of Madame Lu's mouth twitched. She felt like she had met her match, but this kind of opponent made her completely unhappy. This woman was not easy to deal with. With Luo Rongping's help, it was very difficult to trample her to death and get rid of the bastard in her belly that may threaten her son. Look at Mimi. I know that you loves Mimi dearly. Serving tea is just like that. It doesn't matter if you do it or not. Who can say anything about the person in Ye's heart? Your body is heavy now, so the most important thing is to take care of yourself. If you need anything, just tell me. It was natural for a concubine to serve tea with the head wife. If she didn't go through this procedure, she wouldn't be recognized by the head wife. Even if she understood the current situation, Madame Lu's resentment was too heavy today. She couldn't help but speak with sarcasm. Luo Rongping looked at Madame Lu's eyes coldly. He was about to open his mouth, but that woman quietly pulled his sleeve. Mimi is new here, so I naturally have to trouble Jiejia a bit. Jiejia, please don't dislike Mimi for being troublesome. She obediently changed the way she addressed Madame Lu. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652941. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, Please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bikago mobile reading website, bicken.com. Chapter 61. Madame Lu's nails almost dug into her flesh. The third branch didn't have much money, so she had to live a frugal life. Luo Rongping was like most men who spent money recklessly. Now, he was going to spend his money recklessly on a woman. Good, very good. And this woman really couldn't be underestimated. The first time they fought, she was defeated. Madame Lu had never been defeated like this in her life. She must not fall into her hands. Luo Rongping was so ruthless, so Madame Lu didn't want to lower herself. She stopped smiling and said with a cold face, "Whatever you say, it's naturally what it is. But Wan Yang? It's better to change this name. No matter what character it is, it will clash with the third daughter's name. If mother knows, she will not be happy. This concubine will take my leave." Luo Rongping's face changed. He dismissed the servants and took the woman's hand. "In the future, this prince will call you Huan Yang, okay?" In fact, it had nothing to do with Jingwan, but Madame Lu was right. Madame Luo would care. Even if he was unhappy, he had to change it. "It's just a name. You can call me whatever you want." Huan Yang leaned on his shoulder. "To be able to receive your sincerity, this concubine would be willing to die immediately. Don't talk nonsense. We and our children have a long life in the future. This prince has already told you that this relationship with Madame Lu is just a matter of face. If she does anything to you, you don't have to tolerate her. She is a person who cares about her face. She won't reveal it herself. So you don't have to look at her face and live carefully. Madame is the wife, and this concubine is the concubine. Even if Madame does something, it's natural. It's not good to make a scene. As the saying goes, paper can't wrap fire. If someone knows, it will be bad for your reputation. This concubine doesn't want to see. Moreover, it's this concubine and Madame who stole you. It's understandable that Madame is unhappy. So, this concubine won't have a conflict with Madame. But you won't let yourself suffer. So you can rest assured. You don't talk about snatching. I'm yours." Huan Yang's gentleness and thoughtfulness made Luo Rongping feel very comfortable. Lady Huan smiled tenderly and sweetly called out, "Master." "By the way, Master, Madame mentioned third young lady just now. Second brother's legitimate daughter. The old Madame likes her very much. Don't get close to her. She is influenced by the old Madame and doesn't like concubines. If you make her unhappy, even I can't protect you," Luo Rongping said. Luo Rongping was not afraid of Jingwan. In his opinion, she was a girl who would get married sooner or later. Even if she suppressed his daughter, he didn't think much of it. The relationship between the third branch and the second branch had never been good. No matter whether she married well or not, it had little to do with him. In this regard, Luo Rongping was very clear. As for his legitimate daughter, she was always at loggerheads with her. He had said it once or twice, but later he was too lazy to say it again. However, his concubine was different. If something happened, the old Madame could kill her with a word. So the best choice was to stay far away from her. Lady Huan's eyes flashed in a place that Luo Rongping couldn't see. This concubine knows. Let's not talk about how angry Mrs. Lu was when she went back. Anyway, the Luo family basically knew that Luo Rongping brought someone back and was pregnant. After all, there were many people present. If the third branch could put spies in other people's courtyards, naturally, there were spies in their courtyard. Gong Mama was very clear about these twists and turns. She often listened to 30% of it. Even if she didn't eavesdrop in person, she could think about 70% of it. In this way, Jingwan could know more details than others. Jingwan lay on the soft couch and let the maidservant massage her. Although the technique was not as good as Gong Mama's, it was not bad. Gong Mama's foot was injured, but she still wandered around her during the day. Although she was sure that it was much better, Jingwan still didn't want her to continue to be tired. She didn't want to go back to rest, so she let her sit aside and watch. Hearing Gong Mama's soft voice, Jingwan, who was originally sleepy, woke up a little. She said suspiciously, "Third aunt bullied our second branch like this. I was still thinking about how to repay her. I didn't expect that someone would give me a pillow just as I was about to doze off. It's really timely, and it's the most unlikely person. I think it's a coincidence. That woman was probably raised by third master outside for a long time. She just found out that she was pregnant today, so she took this opportunity to ask third master to bring her back. After all, she was born of a concubine, and her reputation was even worse. According to how much third master cares about that woman, it's not difficult to achieve the purpose of entering the Luo family. Gong Mama said, well, it's probably really a coincidence. If it was done by someone, they would have schemed against third uncle and the third branch long ago. Third uncle is not worthy of being schemed against by outsiders. In our own family, third uncle can't threaten eldest uncle, so eldest uncle naturally won't waste such effort. And my father really doesn't put third uncle in his eyes. For the time being, let's wait and see. If the third branch is lively enough, then we'll just watch. If it's not lively enough, then we can add firewood, Jingwan said, and her voice gradually lowered, as if she was about to fall asleep. Gong Mama's expression was unfathomable. Yes, Luo Rongping is not worthy of being schemed against by outsiders. But that person can't bear to see you being bullied. If someone bullies you, you don't need to do anything. He will help you get back 100 times or 1,000 times. Knowing that you don't get along well with the third branch, he has already started to scheme before you came to the capital. It's really not a coincidence that Luo Rongping didn't bring that woman back at any other time, but today. After all, he can't make Madame Lu so angry at any other time. Li Hongyuan casually flipped through the things he got from his so-called third brother and fourth brother. If these things were thrown out, it would definitely be enough to make them suffer. However, it was far from enough to directly overthrow them. However, no matter how useful these things were, Li Hongyuan was not interested. After flipping through them, he threw them aside. Eunuch Mu poured him a cup of tea, and then stood aside with his head lowered like a wooden stake. Wan Wan and Chen Jingmin's engagement is basically set? Li Hongyuan, who seemed to be thinking and lost in thought for a moment, asked. His tone was indifferent and unusually calm, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. However, in Eunuch Mu's view, this was the most abnormal. Miss Luo was going to be engaged to someone else. His master should be gloomy and thinking of ways to kill Chen Jingmin. The calmer he was, the more terrifying it was. Eunuch Mu couldn't help but reach out to wipe the sweat on his forehead. His master knew everything about Miss Luo's big matter. Even so, Eunuch Mu didn't dare to disagree. But would his answer make his master immediately furious and directly wring his head off? Master, it should be like this. Sun Yilin sent a Wei Zi to Wan Wan? Li Hongyuan continued to ask. Master, yes. Eunuch Mu's back began to sweat. Who would save him? Sun Yilin's status is barely enough. Chen Jingmin's is really too low. For this imperial examination, let them know. As long as his standard is passable, he will at least be the third. Yes. Master, what do you want to do? Have you given up on Miss Luo? Otherwise, why did you not trample on the man who was about to become her fiancé, and even put in so much effort to help him? Sometimes, the three people in the first place were personally appointed by the emperor. It was really difficult to influence the emperor's decision. It would be best if Chen Jingmin happened to be favored by the emperor. But now that you have said something, we can't just wait. For insurance, we have to find a way to let Chen Jingmin make his presence known in front of the emperor in advance. It was easy to say but too difficult to do. It was true that a word from the master was enough to make the subordinates run out of legs. Since Sun Yilin has already entered the imperial court as an official, how can he still have time to go to the flower market and neglect his proper duties? Aren't you the one who neglects his proper duties the most, master? If you want to find trouble for others, but don't have time to contact Miss Luo, just say so. If Chen Jingmin is not at the Chen residence, then he is at the Luo residence. Is he preparing to become a bookworm? Young Master Chen has been in the capital for a few months, but the number of times he has been to the Luo residence can be counted on one hand. Although he doesn't participate in literary gatherings or social gatherings every few days, he also doesn't blindly read books. Today is the first time he has seen Miss Luo in the Luo residence. Digression. https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/6652942. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicon.com. Bicon.com mobile version reading website. Bicon.com. Chapter 62. Sure enough, how could his master not care about Miss Luo? Although he didn't know why he only separated those young masters from Miss Luo, instead of killing her directly. He must have other plans. Eunuch Mu never thought that his master was suddenly soft-hearted, and didn't involve the innocent. Those who dared to covet Miss Luo deserved to die, and those who got involved with Miss Luo were also unforgivable. Even if they didn't die, they would definitely be skinned alive. I don't want the third branch of the Luo family to be too harmonious, and I don't want the Luo family's backyard to be in chaos. Master, don't worry. Even if there is a bad reputation, it will only be the third branch of the Luo family, and won't involve others. And it won't disturb the future princess at all. Luo Rongping's ambition can still be allowed to grow a little more. With his relationship with this prince's big brother, I can help to pull some strings for him. His ability was so weak, and he climbed so slowly. It would be hard to find an excuse to deal with him. Yes, I feel a little tired recently, and need to go to White Dragon Temple to rest for a while. Eunuch Mu was slightly stunned. Why did he suddenly change the topic? Yes, no matter what the reason was, he didn't need to think too much, let alone hesitate. He just needed to do it properly for his master. After a while, Li Hongyuan spoke again. Muan, you are becoming more and more careless in serving me. Eunuch Mu was so shocked that his soul almost left his body. He hurriedly knelt down. Please forgive me, master. In the face of Li Hongyuan's questioning, don't try to explain, let alone refute. You just need to apologize and then beg for his forgiveness. If you can still live, then quickly reflect, find out your mistakes and make up for them. Before his master lost his temper, Eunuch Mu thought hard about what he had done. What had he done to make his master dissatisfied? Under what circumstances did his master say that he was careless? It seemed that, suddenly, Eunuch Mu thought of a possibility. Please give me another chance, master. Li Hongyuan raised his eyes and glanced at him lightly. You are not hopeless. Eunuch Mu was terrified. Li Hongyuan was the exact opposite. He didn't mind his subordinates guessing his thoughts. If you could guess his thoughts accurately, or even if he didn't say anything, you could do it beautifully. He would even reward you generously. Unfortunately, his thoughts had always been strange and unpredictable. Sometimes it didn't seem obvious, but no one knew what he was thinking. This was only for those who understood his nature. If it were those who didn't know, they would be as ignorant as fools. They wouldn't even know when they offended him, and were secretly dealt with. Eunuch Mu grew up with him. It was good enough that he could guess it once or twice out of 10 times. Of course, these were generally private affairs. Eunuch Mu was not qualified to intervene in other matters. In the past few years, his master's biggest private matter was Miss Luo. As long as that person's matter was handled well, he could be exempted from responsibility if he made mistakes in other places. Therefore, not only Eunuch Mu, it could be said that everyone close to Li Hongyuan was eager for that person to marry into Jin Wangfu as soon as possible, so that they could tie down their master, the king of hell. Coaxing the future Wang Fei well. Even if you had no ability, you could live the most unscrupulously. It was simply an open secret in their circle. Qin Tianming hasn't come yet? He's getting more and more arrogant. Ben Wang can't invite him. Eunuch Mu secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Qin Darren has arrived, and is waiting outside. It must be said that Qin Tianming was really wronged. When he learned that Jin Wangye summoned him, he saw that the sky was dark and quietly came over, because they basically met at night. Today, he kept feeling that his eyelids were twitching. It could be said that he came much earlier than before, and had been waiting outside the study for Jin Wangya. However, when he appeared and paid his respects, he was directly ignored. He stood there like a wooden stake for nearly 2 hours. There was no tea or water. He stood there and couldn't move at will. His legs were about to stiffen. In the end, the king of hell forgot that there was someone outside. How could he be so aggrieved? When Eunuch Mu called him in, he breathed a sigh of relief and tightened at the same time. He was glad that he didn't have to continue to stand there as punishment. At the same time, he was very nervous. Under normal circumstances, this master wouldn't summon them. Basically, he would only come when there was an important matter. But after thinking for a long time, he didn't feel that there was anything important recently. Could it be that the fire in by Ri Flower Market was actually related to this person? This official greets Wangya. Long live Wangya. Li Hongyuan didn't wake him up, and just left him hanging. Whether it was the death penalty or a reprieve, he just didn't give him a happy ending. After all, Qin Tianming was not Fu Yenting. Not to mention that he was at the same age as Fu Yenting's father. He had led troops to kill enemies, and experienced the baptism of blood and death. Even though Fu Yenting's wisdom far exceeded that of his peers due to the changes in the Fu family, he was still inferior to Qin Tianming. Although he felt uneasy facing Li Hongyuan, in fact, he was not too worried. He believed that he had never done anything that was disadvantageous to this person. At most, he would be tortured by him, but he would never take his life. Although the person in front of him was often said to be temperamental, sinister and ruthless, and had no other good points except for his face, people who came into contact with him in private would know that although his methods were ruthless and his emotions were erratic, he was definitely not someone who couldn't control himself and casually disregarded human life. What was even more ridiculous was that he was also proficient in the art of war. Occasionally, when they talked about it, they always felt that it wasn't just an armchair strategist. No matter if it was arranging troops, deploying troops, dispatching generals, or all kinds of strategies, all of them showed that he was an outstanding general who had experienced countless battles. Jin Wangya Li Hongyuan had never left the capital since he was born. Since childhood, his temper was irritable, and he did things as he pleased. His talent and learning were mediocre. He was the most troublesome person for the Tai tutors. They had never heard that he had learned anything like the art of war. But in fact, the truth hidden under the surface made people who came into contact with this truth feel stormy waves. When did he learn these things and how did he learn these things? Moreover, after their careful observation and deliberation, they found out that even the emperor didn't know about him. Before the age of 16, he was in the palace, but to be able to do so many things behind the emperor's back, what kind of ability was this? It could be understood that he was hiding it for self-protection. After all, he didn't have a biological mother when he was born. But to be able to hide it so deeply, it couldn't be explained with just the word smart. Although the emperor couldn't be called a wise ruler for thousands of years, his ability wasn't bad. Although he wasn't as good as the top, he was still better than the bottom. Regarding the handling of the country's major affairs, it wasn't as smooth as his heart, nor was it satisfactory. Most of the time, he could still get the approval of the courtiers. This was an emperor who had been in the imperial court for 20 to 30 years. But when he left the imperial court, in private, in the imperial court, he basically didn't open his mouth. Regarding the matters of the world, Jin Wangya could often hit the nail on the head and hit the nail on the head. Regarding the matters that they argued with until their faces turned red, he could solve it with just a few words. This made some old foxes admire him so much that they would prostrate themselves in admiration. And through these people, he would present the best method to the emperor. This time, he would let this person be in the limelight. Next time, it would be another person, very good at balancing the situation in the imperial court. They didn't know how many people were controlled by Jin Wangya, but they faintly felt that even if he didn't control half of the courtiers, through his various arrangements, perhaps he had invisibly controlled half of the Qi Yuan dynasty. He wasn't an emperor, but early on, he did what an emperor should do, and had the tendency to be an emperor for thousands of years. This was wisdom that far surpassed his age, shrewdness that far surpassed ordinary people. To be able to do this, it was still very inconceivable. But they were also willing to follow him and assist him. They never doubted that this country wouldn't be his. After all, compared to him, the other princes were simply fireflies competing for splendor with the moon. Even if the emperor passed the throne to the other princes in the future, they probably wouldn't mind being a rebellious courtier and helping Jin Wangye seize the throne. https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/6652943. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will handle it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicon.com. Mobile version reading website: mbicon.com. Chapter 63. What he had was not only a good appearance, but also a smart brain and a good body. He was blessed by nature in all aspects. Therefore, he was the fastest and the best among the princes in both literary and martial arts. He had learned everything he needed to learn in his previous life. Therefore, he was cheated and schemed against. However, these things made him the final winner. Although it was not a perfect victory, in just a few years, his ability was comparable to the most brilliant monarch in history. Moreover, he had been in that position for nearly 20 years. To him, government affairs were as simple as eating and drinking. He had a bad temper. This could be said to be a natural trait. However, in his previous life, he learned to restrain himself. Later on, because of the unforeseen events, he completely released his nature. Therefore, although he was the divine lord in the eyes of the people, he was a complete tyrant in the eyes of the courtiers. He was the emperor who confiscated property, the monarch who exterminated clans. He had killed too many people, especially for. When everything started over again, he no longer learned the things he had learned. He no longer admired his father, and he no longer restrained his temper. Since there were people who were willing to protect him, he naturally could not let them down. He did as he pleased. If he was happy, he would teach you a lesson. If he was unhappy, he would teach you a lesson. You have raised a good son. While Qin Tianming's thoughts were in a mess, Li Hongyuan suddenly spoke. Qin Tianming was startled. For a moment, he could not tell whether Li Hongyuan was speaking the truth or not. Your Highness, please enlighten me. Even if he guessed, he might not be able to guess it. Thus, he decided to ask directly to avoid making himself even more embarrassed. Qin Tianming, you are a smart person. You are also capable in other aspects. But it is a pity that you are not good at raising children. As the saying goes, it is the father's fault if he does not teach them well. If you are busy with work, and do not have time to teach them well, this prince does not mind letting you take a long vacation. You can come back when you have taught them well. Li Hongyuan held the teacup and poked it with the lid, but it didn't enter his mouth. He put it back, and there was a soft crisp sound. Qin Tianming knew that Prince Jin was not joking. If he said he would do it, he would do it. He might not be able to take off his official position directly, but even if he could, he would not do so. Prince Jin had always been good at borrowing power and driving a wedge between people. Although the Marquis of Champion was also glorious, if he lost his position as the left commander-in-chief, the Marquis of Champion would suffer a disastrous decline, and his branch would suffer the harshest blow. After all, he did not have a good relationship with his father in the early years, and they almost broke off. Right now, the champion constabulary seemed to be in harmony, and his father was also particularly fond of him. Although what he fancied was only the power in his hands, the world thought that he compromised with his father for the sake of his reputation. If that was really the case, he wouldn't have secretly submitted to the empress and the eldest prince Kong Qinhuang when the champion constabulary was supporting the fourth prince, the Gong Qinhuang. Although there was a little accident, the master he was ultimately loyal to was Jin Qinhuang. To climb to the position of the left commander-in-chief, he had paid too much. If he lost it like this, it would not be as simple as being unwilling. Right now, He just wanted to immediately rush back and beat up those evil creatures. He wanted to ask them, which one of them ate the bear's heart and leopard's gall, daring to provoke this living king of hell, a person that all the princes and concubines, as well as the emperor's peers, did not dare to provoke. What kind of thing was the grandson of the champion constabulary, the son of the left commander-in-chief? It's this official's fault. Please give this official another chance. This official will go back and teach them well. Everyone says that you are a smart person, very good at judging the situation. Moreover, compared to other people, you are not so afraid of Benwang. Fortunately, once you have set your mind on something, you will not easily have second thoughts. However, is Benwang the master that you have set your mind on? If he was still calm before, Qin Tianming really had some fear at this time. However, at this time, swearing to express his loyalty was useless. Prince Jin did not believe in these things. After calming himself down, he somewhat hoarsely opened his mouth. This is the so-called a woman dresses up for the one who likes her. A gentleman dies for the one who understands him. Although this official and my father do not get along, this official has no doubts about the belief of being loyal to the monarch and defending the country. I hope that Qi Yuan will be strong, and I hope that the world will be peaceful. Li Hongyuan was silent for a moment. Has Benwang ever told you that the world is not that important in Benwang's eyes? Qin Tianming suddenly raised his head and looked at Li Hongyuan in disbelief. His lips trembled, but not a word came out. He wanted to say that it was impossible, but he could feel that Prince Jin was not joking. You want to ask why? Since it is not that important, why do you have to be so deliberate? Only with supreme power can one do whatever one wants. The country is not the most important to this prince, but it is something that must be controlled. Furthermore, this prince believes that the possibility of this prince becoming a tyrant is far greater than that of a wise ruler. Therefore, you can still reconsider and choose another wise ruler. Qin Tianming thought that he had long been able to remain calm, but now he had to admit that he was a little confused. Seeing Qin Tianming's appearance, Li Hongyuan suddenly smiled with an unknown meaning. It was a smile that made countless women infatuated. But Qin Tianming was so shocked that all the blood in his body froze. The bloodthirst and killing intent in his eyes were so obvious. At this moment he really felt it. Prince Jin Li Hongyuan. The side that people did not know about was admirable. The side that people knew about was real and not a disguise. He did not lose his mind. He knew what he was doing. He really decided your life and death based on his mood. Wangya. Qin Tianming suppressed the strong desire to run away. If you lose your life, everything is empty talk. This official also firmly believes that whether Wangya is a wise monarch or a tyrant, you will certainly not joke about Qi Yuan's foundation. Scared, Li Hongyuan relaxed his body and leaned back. He seemed to be in a good mood, very leisurely and contented. Qin Tianming lowered his head and remained silent. He was really scared. Whether you are loyal or not, it doesn't matter. If you have the ability, if you have the courage, find another master. Or even report to Fu Huang. Benwang will not frown. If Benwang is brought down by you, then it's your own incompetence. If you can't bring down Benwang, then it's your bad luck. Simply arrogant to the point of conceit. Qin Tianming did not dare to question. Mu Gonggong did not dare to question. And the shadow guards in the dark did not dare to question. Go back and train the young masters well. You are a tiger general, so don't raise a nest of dog sons. Benwang will not be stingy with the tiger cubs. Benwang is not afraid of being overshadowed. If you have the ability, one duke and one marquis in a family is nothing. If you have 2 dukes in a family, even if you have 3 dukes and 4 dukes, I can still help you. The stick was ruthless, but the date was also extremely tempting. Qin Tianming had not yet broken free from the shock when he heard the words, which aroused the courage and ambition in his bones. The combination of the two together made his body involuntarily tremble. Wangya, get out of here. This official will leave now. Qin Tianming stood up and staggered, not because his legs were numb, but because he was a little weak. He did not dare to lose his manners, so he slowed down his movements and retreated out of the study. The night wind blew, and his back was cold. Qin Tianming was shocked to realize that his clothes were wet. What happened today could not be considered as making things difficult for him. However, the psychological pressure he was under was unprecedented. Qin Tianming returned to the champion Marquis Fu and called his sons, regardless of whether they were Di or Shu, to the study. Even if they were asleep or still performing the rites, he could not hesitate for a moment. Each one of them was at a loss. What was going on? What did you all do today? Tell me one by one. They did not dare to disobey their father's orders. Starting from the eldest, they began to tell the details one by one. The more he listened, the tighter Qin Tianming's brows furrowed. It was not because they had discovered something big, but on the contrary, the most outrageous behavior was just going to the brothel, drinking a little wine, or gambling a little. The Gongzi brothers of the capital, 10 times out of 10, did these things. It was nothing. Just these Jin Qinhuang would definitely not ask. Are you sure you are not hiding anything? After getting their affirmative nod, I will say it again, no details can be left out. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652944. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 64. Qin Tianming's brows furrowed like a river. He couldn't find any suspicious points. Moreover, according to Jin Qinhuang's temperament, if he was present and offended him, he definitely wouldn't remain silent. But an unintentional sentence, a small matter, even if it offended Jin Qinhuang, it wouldn't reach his ears. What was going on? Qin Tianming probably couldn't think of it, even if he cracked his head. It was just because his youngest Di son kicked over the black peony in anger. The Luo family's daughter, Jingwan, was distressed for the flower, and Li Hongyuan was distressed for her. At that time, he couldn't show that he cared about her, so he could only find someone to settle the account behind her back. Qin Tianming's youngest Di son didn't have the qualifications to stand in front of Li Hongyuan, so he could only do it. In desperation, Qin Tianming gave his sons a confinement order. If they had official business, they were to return home immediately after finishing. If they had nothing to do, they weren't allowed to step out of the house half a step. From today onwards, the books that were thrown away were to be picked up again, and the martial arts that were abandoned were to be picked up again. Several Qin Gongzi were stupefied by their father's move. Those who had official positions were fine, but those who didn't have official positions and loved to play, such as Qin Tianming's youngest Di son, were simply asking for their old lives. Just as they were about to habitually refute a few words, their father threw them a glare, and they obediently shut their mouths. When his mother was protecting him, he could still be unyielding, but his mother wasn't unprincipled in protecting him. When it came to serious matters, one wrong move, and she dealt with him more ruthlessly than his father. Qin Tianming suspected that this matter was likely caused by this youngest Di son. Usually, he was the one who could cause trouble the most, so he didn't have a good expression. Compared to other people, he was more cautious and warned that if he dared to sneak away, he would directly break his legs. However, it was Qin Tianming's simple and crude approach that made his branch more prosperous, and also allowed his youngest Di son to avoid the retaliatory blow caused by the fire in the flower market. Qin Tianming could only temporarily solve the matter like this, but he still didn't know if that master would be satisfied. The person Qin Tianming was thinking about someone else at this moment. It must be said that this ferocious beast was not a vegetarian to begin with. It had always restrained itself from eating meat. However, today, it suddenly licked 2 mouthfuls of fragrant fatty meat. It was the piece of meat that it had been longing for a long time. It was only because of many restrictions that it could not swallow it whole that it restrained itself. Perhaps it was because of the environment, but at that time, Giving up on the fatty meat in its mouth was not something unbearable. However, now that it was late at night, it could not help but recall the taste. It seemed to be incomparably delicious, yet it also felt like it had not tasted anything. The more it was like this, the more unbearable it became, and the more restless the evil fire in its body became. When he bathed, he directly soaked in cold water. Eunuch Mu trembled with fear when he saw this. It was still a little cold at night. What if the cold air entered his body? In fact, what Eunuch Mu was more puzzled was why his master had wronged himself like this. He was clearly a prince, and had a reputation of being dissolute. Even if he changed his bed every night, no one could say anything about it. In fact, as far as he knew, his master really did not have a single woman. Sometimes, he even suspected that his master had a hidden disease. However, as a close attendant, he was very clear about his master's physical condition. It could not be better. After eliminating all the possibilities, the only reason left was the most unlikely one. His master was keeping his chastity for Miss Luo. What was the reason that could make such a proud and honorable person, like his master, do this? And it was under the circumstances that the other party was completely unaware of it. They knew that his master had a secret because he had not concealed it, and did not care about letting them know. As for what the secret was, they had no way to find out, and they did not dare to find out. Li Hongyuan soaked in the cold water for 2 hours, but it seemed that there was no effect. Eunuch Mu was called in by Li Hongyuan. He originally thought that he was going to wait on him to sleep. Unexpectedly, Li Hongyuan had already put on his clothes. He was wearing a black brocade robe, a belt around his waist, and a pair of brocade shoes of the same color. In addition, he had no other accessories, but his hair was still wet and hanging down, which did not cover his coldness. On the contrary, for some reason, he made people more and more afraid to approach him. Eunuch Mu had to go forward to dry Li Hongyuan's hair. It took him some time, and then he automatically tied up his hair. He had made a mistake once, and he could not make the same mistake again. It was not the first time for him to go out at night, but Eunuch Mu had a feeling that the purpose of tonight was different from before. The secret guards who followed Li Hongyuan thought that he had something important to do. When they arrived outside the courtyard wall of the Luo family, they thought of a certain possibility and could not believe it. However, when they saw their master jump over the wall and enter, these well-trained secret guards could not help but be stunned. Fortunately, the stiff expression did not last for too long. Thinking of the fact that their master kidnapped people during the day, it seemed that it was not surprising that he would do something like sneaking into a lady's room at night. What did the secret guards do? When their master planned, they took action first. When their master had an accident, they risked their lives to save him. When their master killed someone, they dealt with the aftermath. Now that their master wanted to sneak into a lady's room, they naturally had to keep watch. They looked at each other. Those who should be outside stayed outside, and those who should go in went in. They had a tacit understanding of the division of labor, and did not need to communicate with each other. Although Li Hongyuan had never been to the Luo family, he was very familiar with the layout of the Luo family. He did not need to take a detour. He avoided the guards on night patrol, and went directly to Begonia Elegant House. At this time, Begonia Elegant House was naturally sleeping in the dark like other places. Hearing the familiar signal, Mama Gong was immediately alerted. She nimbly got up, but did not make any sound. She listened carefully. The sound was very soft, and did not disturb others. Mama Gong held a slightly bright lamp, and walked into the courtyard. She saw the figure standing proudly. It was obviously a man, and it was very obvious that he was not one of the secret guards. Mama Gong immediately realized who it was. Mama Gong hated that she could not fiercely bite him. Mama Gong stepped forward. With the help of the dim light, she finally saw the other party's face. It was indeed the living king of hell who meant what he said. "Greetings to your highness. Your highness came in the middle of the night. It is really improper and has broken the rules. It also degrades your highness's prestige and loses your bearing and self-restraint." The secret guards who followed behind her almost broke out in cold sweat. They didn't know that the Lady Protector was capable in all aspects. These two were not ordinary. While they were sweating for her, they also faintly admired her in their hearts. This prince thought that Mama Gong should have known that these things are nothing to this prince. If this prince wants to see Wan, you can't stop me. I don't think this prince needs to teach you what to do. Mama Gong suppressed the anger in her heart. There was a hungry wolf coveting her miss, but she had to be an accomplice. If she let the other secret guards do it, a group of rough men would cause her Mrs. Servant girls to suffer. Therefore, she could only use a gentle method to let those servant girls have a good night's sleep. Your Highness, please wait a moment. Li Hongyuan stood in the courtyard. When he saw the dim light in Jingwan's room, he walked straight in. Because of the injury on her foot, Jingwan was determined not to let her keep watch at night. Moreover, Jingwan did not like to let others keep watch at night. Therefore, the two senior servant girls were the ones who were guarding outside tonight. However, Mama Gong had already moved them to another place. Mama Gong waited in the room without any intention of leaving. Li Hongyuan completely ignored her and casually threw an item to her. Mama Gong subconsciously caught it and opened the cloth wrapped around it. When she saw the item inside, she really did not know what expression she should have. He used a precious treasure like the night luminescent pearl to spy on a beauty at night. Li Hongyuan walked to Jingwan's bedside and lifted the muslin curtain. When he saw Jingwan's peaceful and beautiful sleeping face, his restless heart suddenly calmed down. In his previous life, he had not seen her sleeping face many times. However, every time he saw her sleeping face, her brows were tightly knitted, as if she was in a nightmare and could not escape. Li Hongyuan reached out and gently brushed his fingers across her brows. They were smooth and delicate. Following the corner of her eyes, his fingers sank into her hair. Her well-maintained black hair made it hard for him to part with it. Mama Gong put the night luminescent pearl into a hollow incense ball and hung it at the head of the bed. Immediately, the inside of the curtain could be seen clearly. Jingwan's originally excellent skin was now glowing like a pearl. Compared to his previous life, this was the first and only time he hugged her. Although his body was originally good, he had experienced all kinds of hardships and had become rough. However, it was this kind of her that made him intoxicated. It made him shameless and unscrupulous. In this life, he must protect her well. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652945. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 65. Your Highness. Even though Mama Gong lowered her voice, there was still a hint of sternness in her voice. Li Hongyuan turned his head and glanced at her indifferently. That glance made Mama Gong's heart jump to her throat, blocking all the words she had yet to say. Nanny Gong frowned. The possessiveness in her eyes was dense to the point it couldn't be dispersed, and she seemed like a wild beast that occupied its territory. Whoever dared obstruct her or tried to seize her prey would immediately pounce out and tear that person into pieces. Either get out or shut up for this prince. Mama Gong's face was stiff. After a few breaths, she opened her mouth and said, Your Highness really cares for Mississippi. No matter what you do, please think for Mississippi. Then she crouched down and left. No matter whether she was happy or angry, she never forgot the rules and etiquette. She had always been strict with herself but tolerant of others. She was meticulous with Jingwan. Although Jingwan's servant girls revered her, they mostly treated her like family. Sometimes she was the best teaching. During the day, she had reminded Li Hongyuan once. This was the second time, and it would also be the last time. Li Hongyuan, the former master, had a bad temper and often did unimaginable things. Moreover, he always did whatever he wanted. If it was something else or someone else, it was impossible to expect him to restrain himself. However, this person was her young lady. Nanny Gong had a deep trust in him. Based on how much he cared for her, he really held her in the palm of his hand and placed her at the top of his heart. Sometimes, she even felt that if he had to choose between the river and the young lady, he would choose the young lady. That kind of love was not fake. After all, the young lady herself did not know. Naturally, it was impossible for her to show it to people like them. If he could do this, how could he do something bad to Miss at this critical moment? If he really couldn't control himself and took Miss's body, he would definitely think of a way to deal with the aftermath and not let Miss's reputation be tarnished. Now that Granny Gong had thought this through, she decided not to continue to stand there and cause trouble. Li Hongyuan really didn't care whether Granny Gong went out or not. She slowly took off her shoes and socks, then her outer robe, and then her inner garment. The whole process was quite pleasing to the eyes. Finally, she took off her crown, and her hair that didn't belong to Jingwan fell down. It must be said that Nanny Gong had also used something on Jingwan. Otherwise, she couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't pounce on him in this situation. After all, he was a handsome man with an amazing body. In the middle of the night, a man and a woman alone in a place where one's imagination would run wild, doing something so seductive. Most importantly, his deep eyes were filled with only her. How many people could resist him? Jingwan felt that she would most likely become a layman at that moment. Unfortunately, Jingwan was in a deep sleep. Because she was drugged with something to calm her nerves, she didn't even dream. Naturally, she was unaware of the outside world. Li Hongyuan placed his hand on the neckline of his underwear. After hesitating for a moment, he slowly tore off his underwear as well. His slender and powerful body and wheat-colored skin. Even though he was a grown man, due to his pampered upbringing and proper maintenance, he looked just as delicate. Li Hongyuan lifted the brocade quilt and was about to slide in, but his body couldn't help but stiffen. The situation under the quilt was very different from what he had imagined. It looked like she was sleeping properly, but what was underneath was not proper at all. Because Mama Gong practiced martial arts, her hearing was far better than ordinary people. When she heard the faint sounds outside, she suddenly thought of her Mrs. bad habit that couldn't be corrected. She was originally a hungry wolf. If she continued like this, she really couldn't stay calm. Jingwan, who was originally unaware of the outside world, opened her eyes in a daze. Coincidentally, her eyes met with Li Hongyuan's. Perhaps Li Hongyuan didn't expect Jingwan to wake up. He was stunned for a moment and didn't know how to react. However, Jingwan rubbed against his body because of her discomfort. This reaction made Li Hongyuan instantly understand that Jingwan wasn't really awake. Otherwise, a girl in the boudoir wouldn't be like this when she suddenly encountered something like this. Li Hongyuan sighed in relief, and at the same time felt a little regretful. He was prepared to be discovered by Jingwan. However, some things weren't easy to explain. He still hoped that after the two of them got married, they would have some time together. Then, even if some of the things he did were a little out of line, he could confidently say that he fell in love with her at first sight. However, Li Hongyuan wasn't a saint. He helped her do everything behind her back, but she didn't know anything about it. He was still a little unhappy. Jingwan's eyes were covered with a layer of mist. The corners of her eyes were dyed with an abnormal shade of red. Since she was awake, Li Hongyuan just assumed that the two of them were in love with each other. That exceptionally pleasant voice kept calling out, "Wan Wan" by her ear. Li Hongyuan had experienced the ups and downs of his previous life. He had tasted all kinds of joys and sorrows. He had stepped through wind, frost, rain, and snow. Countless people wouldn't be able to experience the ups and downs of life. Therefore, his rationality was absolutely beyond anyone's imagination. Even if he was thinking, he knew that now wasn't the time. Therefore, he didn't completely indulge himself. Mama Gong waited outside for 2 hours before she heard the living king of hell calling for her to come in. Even though she was mentally prepared, Mama Gong still quickly walked in after hearing the call. She lost her usual calmness. Li Hongyuan was loosely draped in a robe. He wrapped Jingwan in a quilt and held her in his arms as he sat on a soft couch. His hair was loose and his eyes were half closed. There was a hint of laziness in his expression. The usual hostility and gloominess were all gone. His entire person had softened, And because of this, he appeared even more attractive. Even Mama Gong couldn't help but be startled when she saw him. In just a short moment, Mama Gong looked at Jingwan's peaceful sleeping face and quickly walked to the bedside. She lifted the gauze curtain and looked at the messy bed. Her heart was filled with panic. Fortunately, there were no traces of blood. Mama Gong deftly changed the things on the bed. She turned around to look at Li Hongyuan. "Your Highness, this servant asked your people to go back and get some clothes for you. I'll also pour some water for you to wash up in the washroom." Li Hongyuan opened his eyes and glanced at her. He got up with Jingwan in his arms and put her on the bed. Mama Gong mixed some warm water for him and put it in the washroom. Then she went back to wash Jingwan. In order not to disturb others, she naturally couldn't take a bath in a big way. Mama Gong lifted the quilt and saw that Jingwan didn't have any marks on her body. She didn't know whether she should admire his endurance or doubt his love for this girl. It was said that it was difficult to control oneself when one was deeply in love. Even if he was a man with an unmentionable disease, it wouldn't prevent him from leaving some marks. However, it was obvious that Nanny Gong's idea was premature. When she turned Jingwan over and wiped her back, Nanny Gong was so angry that she almost fainted when she saw the dense marks on her back. Her skin color was not normal at all. Some of the marks even had small red dots the size of a needle tip. If she didn't apply medicine, Jingwan would definitely notice it when she woke up tomorrow morning. This made Mama Gong almost unable to restrain herself and do something that offends her superiors. When Li Hongyuan came out of the washroom, Mama Gong was concentrating on applying medicine for Jingwan. She was angry and naturally didn't give him a good face. However, although Li Hongyuan only tasted a bit of meat, it was still far from being full. Right now, he was in a good mood and didn't bother to argue. She tidied up Jingwan, including her hair. The most important thing was that she put on her underwear. Seeing that Li Hongyuan wouldn't leave at this time, Mama Gong packed up her things and went out. Out of sight, out of mind. Li Hongyuan supported his head with one hand, lying on his side and looking at Jingwan. His fingers twirled a strand of her hair around his finger and played with it. Ben Wang originally didn't intend to do anything. It was Yu Wan who seduced Ben Wang first. Therefore, you can't blame Ben Wang for not doing the same. If Jingwan heard his words, she would probably be irritable. Jin Qinwang, where's your face? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652946. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bikago mobile reading website, mbicken.com. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.